So I'm back again, learning how to do live streaming. I guess you only get 28 minutes because I was just right in the middle of answering a question for Arnold, and it said stream finished. So I guess now I know that you can only stream for 28 minutes and 46 seconds. I was answering his question. He had several comments in the comment section about Arnold. If you're out there, I'm trying to continue this. I guess I ran out of time in the stream. So I was talking about the dirty little secrets of radiology, and that is that there are some states that don't require the licensure, and there is a half X-ray tech type license you can get, a limited practice rad tech, who can't do everything a fully licensed tech can do, but it is a shorter way into the field, but you won't make as much, and you can't do what a normal X-ray tech can do. But you had asked about going into MRI, and what I was trying to get to was that there might be some places, if you really dig into it, that will cross-train you off the street, because MRI does not give radiation, so it does not require a radiation license. But I don't think I've ever met anybody in my 20 years that's done it that way. Everybody that I've ever met has been an X-ray tech first, because the ARRT who licensed X-ray techs is who gives the MRI certification. Now, there is another one. What was the name of that organization? ARMB or something. There's an MRI accreditation out there that does like an MRI license. But at the crux of it all, you have to learn how to do it somehow. So if a facility was willing to take you on for 6 months and pay you while they trained you, then you could take one of these like weekend courses where you can study for board exams and learn the classroom type material. But I recommend going through X-ray school. I mean, it's like I said, I've never known anybody to get into an MRI program that didn't go through X-ray school first, although I hear in rumors that it's possible. And maybe they're just not talking about it because they don't want to get hassled. But if you want to get into MRI or CT, you're going to have to go to X-ray first, especially CT, because it does give radiation. So making sure the mic's on. So you continue to say medical imaging interests me. I'm thinking about taking an MRI program. Want to make sure I'm planning things appropriately. I have 3 kids, 13, 10, and 8. I wanted to see working kids and doing this will be feasible. It looks like you guys did it, and it's inspiring. Yeah, so I decided to get as much education as I could while my kids were young, and I kind of lied to myself and said, or made myself feel better by saying, if I do it when they're young, they won't remember it. And it's true for the most part, but I'm still in school, and my kids are grown. I mean, I still have some at home, but I like education. It's weird. It's a love-hate relationship. When I'm not in school, I feel like there's something I'm not doing, like my schedule's not full enough. And when I am in school, I can't wait to get out. So I went to X-ray school after getting my bachelor's degree from Arizona State. And then while I was in X-ray school, I applied for ultrasound school and kind of went immediately into that right out of X-ray school. And while I was in X-ray or an ultrasound school, my wife got accepted to X-ray school. And so my last semester of ultrasound school was her first semester of X-ray. So there was a time when we really had to work our schedules tight because we had the kids. We have 6 daughters. Back then, I think we only had 3, maybe 4. I'm not sure. So can it be done? Yes, because I've always worked full-time. In fact, I've always worked more than full-time. And I went through X-ray and ultrasound and got a master's, and I'm working on my doctorate. So it can be done. People will tell you can't. The schools will tell you that you can't work and go to school because they want you to focus 100% because they're kind of graded, if you will, on how well the students do that graduate. What percentage of them pass the board exams, what percent graduate, what percent drop out and don't graduate. And that can affect their funding from the state or wherever they get their funding from. So they don't want you to work, but that's just not how life works. I mean, if you don't have to work, good for you. But you said, I'm in Illinois and I'm trying to figure out if the 2-year program This is just X-ray, MRI being extra 1 year, I think is better than the private direct path. So I have a whole nother video on private versus public. I mean, I could get into it now, but basically, private's more expensive, but it gets you in and out quicker. And that's what I did for X-ray. You can wait 3 years to get into the public program and only pay $8,000 for school, or you can get in immediately and pay 20, 30, 40,000 and get out 3 years earlier than if you'd gone to public. So you got to figure, when you get out and you're making $50,000 or $60,000, you got 3 years of making $60,000. That makes up for what you paid for the program. And if you had waited for public school, you'd be making whatever you're making now until you graduate 5 years down the road. So that's my opinion on private versus public. And you have to start with X-ray school. Just bite the bullet and do that. And MRI is not an extra year. So I think I have some cross-training videos, but really cross-training. So that's a question you ask when you get hired as an X-ray tech. One of the questions, during the interview, and they say, "Oh, do you have any questions for us?" One of your questions needs to be, do you cross-train into advanced modalities? And if so, how often? Because for one, if they say no, you probably don't want to work there. I mean, you may work there just to pull some money out of them, but you don't have a career future there, because if they don't cross-train, that means they hire people from outside to fill vacancies. So your chances of cross-training are slim. If they say they do cross-train, that's why you ask how often, because if they say one tech every 5 years or whatever, then your chances are still really slim, depending on the size of the hospital. But if they cross-train frequently, that's a good sign. It's something that I always promoted, because it helps build loyalty, and it gives back to the techs for their hard work. Everybody wants to advance at some point. So make sure the job you apply to when you become an X-ray tech cross-trains. And then if you can cross-train, CT takes about 3 months to learn on average. MRI takes about 6 months to learn on average. And everybody teaches it differently. The way I liked it at one of my most recent facilities was the supervisor of MRI would take you under his wing for a month or two, and made sure that you learned, hi, Laura, I'll be right with you. The supervisor made sure you learned what had to be learned. And then he would hand you off to other techs who would kind of teach you their way of doing things. And the danger there is you could pick up some bad habits. The positive is you learn different ways to doing things. So you get 2 or 3 months with the supervisor who knows what he's doing, and then you get 2 or 3 months with the rest of the techs who show you how they do it. Plus, you kind of see a different type of patient from day shift to second shift, maybe even a night shift if there's an MRI night shift where that place is at. But we can go into that in another video. I can explain the cross-training and all the other departments, but you asked about MRI. So the only thing I would go out and take a class for MRI is to help you pass the boards that the ARRT gives you, because a weekend course like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday cram for MRI is very helpful. And then you can go take the board exams, study on your own for several months, then go take the weekend crash course, and then go take the MRI boards. And that's how you can get in. So I hope that helped you, Arnold. Yes, it can be done with kids. You've seen my videos. My wife and I both have been through X-ray school. I've been through ultrasound. I learned MRI and CT, and still going to school. So you can accomplish what you want to accomplish. Laura's on, and Laura said, I was just told that most people don't hire if I don't go to a JCERT accredited program. Is that true? Not necessarily, because if you go to the ART website, and I might be able to do that while we're talking. Let's see. ART actually recognizes other accrediting bodies. And I went to JCERT, which was not where I needed to go. It's ART. I was just looking at this the other day. The ART, because somebody asked about a school that was not JCERTed, and it was actually accredited by somebody else. Where was that? And I posted that, I think, in our Facebook group. Partners, schools, accreditation. Yeah, so here it is. So it's on the ART.org website. Um, it says at ART, education is part of our equation for excellence. We rely on accrediting agencies, sometimes called mechanisms, to determine the quality of educational institutions, their programs, and their courses. Below is a list of ART approved accreditation mechanisms. And it goes on to say, as part of the requirements for the ART certification and registration, you'll need to complete an ART approved educational program and an academic degree, associate's degree or higher, that is accredited by one of the mechanisms listed on this page. You must complete your program and degree on or after the date specified in the chart that they provide. I'll try to, here, I'll throw it in the comments section. How about that? I'm still kind of getting used to this live stream stuff. So there's the link. So basically, they have ART recognized accreditation mechanisms, they call them, and JCERT is one of them. There's another JCERT for NucMed, and then there's one called there's a JCERT for ultrasound, but there's another one called the Commission on Accreditation of Allied Health Education Programs, or CAHEP. So CAHEP is recognized by the ART. So if your school is CAHEP accredited, you're fine. There are also regional accrediting agencies, and there's a bunch of them. Commission on Higher Education of the Middle States Association of Colleges and Schools. That's in Delaware, D.C., Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And there's a bunch more. I'll let you go look them up on that link that I gave. But as long as your school is from one of those, you should be fine. The other thing you can do is you can always call the ART and say, I'm looking at Smith & Jones College for x-ray. If I go there, can I sit for the ART exam? And they'll be able to tell you. So that's a good question. I get a lot of different variations on that question. So I typically try to refer back to this page to help you guys out. So thanks for stopping by, Laura. I'm going to shut the mic off and keep working unless somebody has any more questions. I thought I could leave this on for like an hour and just see who chimes in and has questions, but it shut off on me around 28 minutes a few minutes ago. So looks like you can only live stream, I guess, for a half hour unless I'm doing something wrong, but probably doing something wrong. But anyway, I thought since I'm working from home today, I'd turn on my camera and answer any questions anybody has. No problem. Glad to help you. So if you have a question, post it in the comments section. I wish we could turn our cameras on, both of us, and just have a talk. I got to figure out how to do that. I'd really like to start doing that, maybe in the mornings from like, I don't know, 6 to 7 or 7 to 8 in the morning. Just kind of have like an office hours for anybody that has any questions, because there's so much misinformation out there. So many websites that are posting just garbage that is not true. And so many people are honestly looking for a good career, and they kind of get the idea that radiology might be the way to go, but you get these. I saw one the other day said you can get an x-ray license in 6 months, and they called them technicians. So anyway, if you have any questions, post in the comment section. I'm going to go back to work here, but I'll leave the camera on, and thanks for checking in. Hi, Teresa. Give me just a second. I'm going to finish the thought from the. All right, so there's that. Hey, thanks for chiming in, Teresa. Teresa. I grew up with a Teresa. Oftentimes we just got lazy and said Tressa. So, hello. I will be starting the MRI program in a couple weeks. Should I be concerned about the impact of CMS proposed 2021 MFFs on radiology payments? Let me go take a look. I'm guessing that's the one where they're suggesting 11% kind of across the board. You know who's good with that stuff? And these guys is Aunt Minnie. And I check Aunt Minnie every morning, usually, because they're really kind of our Drudge Report of radiology, if you know what I mean. Let's see. Let's just put in MPFF. I've got lots of answers for that question. Let me just see if anybody, CMS finalizes cuts, ACR opposes, so that's December. Let's open these separately. Let's start with the December 2nd article. So the ACR announced that it opposes the U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services 2021 Medicare physician fee schedule. That's the MFFS final rule. The ACR opposes the rule, which was issued December 1st due to its evaluation and management policy. This policy resulted in significant reimbursement cuts to specialties, including radiology, that do not perform evaluation and management services. So that is what I thought you were talking about. Let me just look at their other article, which was just put out December 8th. And I believe if you, Teresa, if you get on our Facebook group, the Radiology Technologists group, and I actually cross-posted it to a couple different groups, the ASRT started a campaign against that, where if you'll go give them your email address, they will put it into email formatting that they send out to your representatives for you. So I actually did that, and I put my email address in, and I got an email that same day back from my representative that said, "Thank you for your concern. We're reading it all, and we're here for you." You know how politicians are. But if you want to get involved, sign up for that either at the ASRT website or go join our forum, because there's tons of good stuff over there that you can participate in and read about. So to get to the crux of it, should you be concerned? Let's ask some different questions. If you're a physician and you're seeing a patient with a knee that is extremely painful because this patient is 65 and the cushion is gone and it's bone on bone, and you need to see what's going on in that knee, are you going to say, "Sorry, I can't order this because my imaging department friends aren't going to get paid as much as they used to get paid," right? He's still going to order it. The people that have to pay out of pocket, that don't have insurance, is it going to affect them? No, it's just affecting the hospitals and the imaging clinics on how much they get reimbursed from insurance. So your cash payers, their doctors are still going to order it, and the cash payers are still going to pay it. So the big, what they call, administrators like to talk about the helicopter view or the 40,000 foot view or whatever the latest terminology is for the big picture. I love jargon. No matter what business you're in, there's always goofy jargon. But the big picture, the helicopter view of this topic is you're always going to see a form of this. There's always going to be politicians and or insurance companies, which the insurance companies have lobby groups and lobbyists who bang the politicians over the head. That's what they get paid for, because the insurance companies want to pay less money out. They want to make more money for their investors or their owners. So insurance companies are always going to be trying to pay less. And if they can convince their lobbyists, if they can convince the politicians to write these kinds of bills, then this happens all the time, every year. Talk to a radiologist. Ask them when the last time was the government or CMS put out a reduction in reimbursement rates. It's like every year. So no, Don't let it stop you. Don't be concerned. The problem, the reason you're concerned and the reason it's smart to be concerned is because the problem with healthcare, and this includes radiology. The problem with healthcare is you have two types of people in healthcare. You have the people that are there to help the patients, and you have the people that are there to make money. And that's usually administration. That's usually your executives, your CFOs, COOs, CEOs. How long have I been going? I got maybe 5 minutes. I think this thing cuts off at 28. My point is those executives that only care about the money will always try to squeeze the department. So even if CMS isn't coming after the money, the administrators are. The administrators are taking their time replacing people who quit. They're putting off buying that new piece of equipment that you so desperately need. So one thing that you have to get a tough skin about in healthcare is that you always feel like you're pushing uphill against the almighty dollar or the government or CMS, whatever you want to call it. We're in it for healthcare. We got in it to do what we do to provide services to patients. I got into X-ray and CT and ultrasound because I have a brain that likes to solve problems. I like to have a problem, see if I can solve it. Yay, I solved it, and then move on. Now in healthcare, you can't always solve it, but I can feel good knowing that I gave as much information possible in my CAT scan or in my ultrasound or in my X-ray to the physician who went to school forever to learn how to solve problems. I gave them everything I could to help solve that problem. And oftentimes you do find the issue, but the human body is very complicated, so you can't always figure it out. You're already in the program, or no, you will be starting, which must mean you got accepted, which is probably another feat all by itself. So congratulations there. Climb the ladder. Go in there, and if you learn MRI and you love it, you want to stay there forever, stay there. If you decide you want to try something else, try CT, try ultrasound, try whatever you want to try until you're sick of going to school or sick of cross training. I'll be honest, I did MRI kind of by default because the owner of the hospital where I was working asked me to learn it. I actually was in ultrasound at the time and went to the owner and said, I'd really like to learn echo sonography. And he said, well, look, we're paying out the nose for this traveling MRI tech. Can you please learn that so we can get rid of him? And it's like, well, I kind of took it as if you'll do this, then I'll help you with echo school. So talk about awkward cross-training MRI from a guy that knows you're going to replace him. But whatever, he was professional. We were professional. I learned MRI, and then the owner. But I bring that all up because I didn't particularly enjoy MRI as much because it's just so slow. It takes 30 minutes or more, sometimes 90 minutes to do an exam. Hold still. We're going to do another sequence or this is going to be an hour. Just try not to move. And you go. So I just didn't. I liked ultrasound because I got to look at babies, and that was always exciting for the moms, unless you had that rare occasion where you had a problem, because you do. But I liked ultrasound because it's very tech dependent, and the doctors depend on you to know what you're doing, and you get a little more respect if you ask me than you do when you're like in the X-ray. And that's not fair, but it's just how it is because it's more tech dependent. In X-ray, as long as you take a picture of that, that hand or whatever, it's up to the doctor to figure out what's wrong with that hand. But if I'm scanning a gallbladder and I don't look at the common bile duct and give a picture of that common bile duct to the radiologist, he can't do his job and take a look at it because I didn't look at it myself. So, and you have to write out a worksheet of all the pathology that you see. So it's kind of like a cheat sheet for the radiologist, but I'm kind of sidetracking. Don't worry about the cuts. Worst case scenario, they happen. They hit your place where you work. The administrators who are always looking to pinch anyway are going to go, oh, now we got to save some more money to make up for this. And so what do? Do we, you can't cut the hours of operation because then you're losing money that way. So stay open. So they got to figure out how to reduce expenses. So they can't take your they can't reduce your pay. They can slow down or stop or decrease your increases over the next few years. That's happening all the time. I went 6 years at a hospital back in Mesa, Arizona, a long time ago, 6 years with no raise. That same hospital also didn't pay us a couple of payrolls. They had to wait till they got more money, and it was crazy. They ended up getting bought out, and somebody else owns them now. But don't worry about cuts coming. There's always going to be cuts, and there's always going to be administrators trying to pinch and squeeze and put off buying the equipment that you need. If they're smart, if that comes around, if somebody comes to you and says, Teresa, we're thinking about cutting your hours, and instead of having 2 of you on for an 8-hour shift, one of you gets the first 4 and the other gets the second 4. That way there's still somebody there, but we're not paying both of you, which is a stupid idea. For multiple reasons. But administrators don't know our world. They're only thinking about the buck. So if somebody comes to you, my suggestion would be to think about how can the department do better? How can the department make more money? So let's say they cut the reimbursements and you have joined an online Facebook MRI group. There's actually a really good MRI Facebook group called MRI Safety, I believe. And you could go on there and say, does anybody started doing any new MRI scans on something that typically isn't done or hasn't been done before, or it's kind of a new area, and see what other people are doing and look into, can your facility start doing that? Can you start doing those types of MRIs like pacemakers? Everywhere I worked, we never touched pacemakers for the longest time. And then I found out you can. You just have to have the cardiologist there and the rep there and a nurse there, and you just have to turn the thing off, make sure everybody's there for it. And so we were able to open up a whole new revenue stream, because prior to that, all of our pacemaker patients were driving 2 hours away to another hospital. So as a tech, I would say that it always behooves you to be thinking about how can your department be doing better, because at some point, whether it's your immediate boss or that person's boss, somebody's going to come down and try to squeeze you, because that's just the nature of business, whether it's healthcare or not. So be thinking about, how can our schedule be more precise? How can our scheduling process be more, for the patients? How's the tech schedule and how's the scheduling for the patients? Some places double book for every 30 minutes. That way, if somebody doesn't show, they still have a patient there. I was at one place that had 50 MRI patients a month that wouldn't show up or could not complete the exam because they're claustrophobic or they just couldn't handle it. So that's a big problem. That's a big loss in revenue. So as a tech, always be thinking about, and it's easy to go, I'm a tech. I'm not supposed to think of it. But in a way, it helps you, because if your administrator ever comes down with issues and you've already kind of thought out some plans, that's good to have, and it could save you some hours. Like recently, they've been sending texts home saying, you have to take 3 days off and use your own PTO because we can't afford to pay you. Well, that's a bunch of crap. That PTO is earned so that the technologists can take time off when they need it, not because the hospital wants to move some money around on their balance sheets and show that they're not spending as much. So I hope that answers your question. I kind of go on and on a little bit. I don't know if you're still on or not, Teresa, but if you have any more questions, post them. I'm happy to answer them. And don't worry, there's always something coming down the pipeline that is going to affect reimbursement rates. Part of that too is, your billing department. This is another little thing that we really don't learn about, and we shouldn't have to. And sometimes they make us, but it's the billing side. I worked at a hospital once that made us, when I was working in X-ray, we had to write down the billing code, the ICD-9 code. So we had to go, okay, we're doing a chest X-ray. The patient said it was for chest pain, so I had to look up chest pain code and put it on my rec and submit it so billing knew how to bill it. I'm like, that's their job. So if I don't know what I'm doing with billing codes, I just did a free X-ray. So, we don't see what happens after we do the exam. You may do a whole day's worth of MRIs perfectly and helped all of your patients feel better. And if your billing department sucks and they do something wrong and you don't get reimbursed for it, it's your budget that they screw up. So as an administrator, I always get to know the billing people and the coding people. and run reports that show how many got denied and why. Is it because my radiologist didn't put a special secret code word into the report that CMS or whoever wants to see, Blue Cross or whatever? But that's on the administrator. That shouldn't be on the technologist. What you guys should do is just watch for efficiencies, how to get better as technologists. Are you constantly getting people coming in early for their appointments or too late for their appointments? Or, patients often get told and that's another thing, just like billing and coding, registration and central scheduling is a whole nother department outside of us. And I had one that used to tell patients, get there at noon to do paperwork so you can get your exam done at 1. Well, they heard exam at 1, so they'd show up at 1, and none of the paperwork was done. And now you got a lag, and it's bumping everybody off schedule, which screws everything up. So, that's all administrative stuff. But if you see that as a tech, you need to tell somebody, either your lead tech or your boss, whatever, that you're seeing this problem occurring. And when you do see a problem, try to think of a solution, because that'll just make things move even faster to fixing the problem. If you're one of those people that just constantly serving problems, pretty soon the boss doesn't want to see you, right? Even though they should, because they want to know. They should want to know about the problems. It's a lot more helpful if you bring solutions too. So you said, great explanation. Thanks for the reassurance, because I'm really excited about the program and learning more modalities. I got accepted in echocardiography too. You nerd. I so wanted to do that. Man, you get it. You know what? You get into echo and then start looking around for pediatric echo. Learn pediatric echo. Because then it's like the goose that laid the golden egg. You got the Willy Wonka golden ticket. If you can do pediatric echo, people be like, oh. Because I think I've known 4 in my career. You can pretty much be PRN at 5 of your local hospitals and make $75 an hour and work whenever you want to, because they're at your beck and call, because nobody else does those. So if MRI is great. You heard my spiel about not being too excited about MRI myself, but if you get into echo, you're going to make big bucks, but you're going to you're going to be taking pictures of the same organ over and over and over and over and over, right? Because an echo is just an ultrasound of the heart. And, it's 50, 60, 70 views. And I've seen people, watch for this. I've seen techs. I don't know if they were really trained that way, or they were lazy, or the cardiologist allowed it. But I've seen echocardiographers who would just cine. They would just, subcostal and substernal and just move it around and cine loop everything. And I'm like, wait a minute. That's cheating. You have to know what you're looking at. You can't just cine everything. But that's few and far between. You're going to learn how to take all these different pictures from all these different angles. And echo sonography or echocardiography is very exciting to me. But if you can launch off of that into pediatric echo, wow, the opportunities and the money that was my original goal, was to get through ultrasound to echo and to pediatric, and just never got to echo, and then ended up in management. So good luck on the MRI and the echo. Now remember too, Teresa, the more you learn, the more valuable you are, and don't let them take advantage of you, because we had that talk, right, about the administrators and how they just want to suck the life out of everything. They're going to want you. And in fact, I had a job at this hospital in Mesa on the night shift. I was the Friday, Saturday, Sunday night guy. I did x-ray, CT, ultrasound, and MRI until they took the MRI trailer away. But, then that sounds horrendous, but there were nights I wouldn't have any patients at all. It was a 20-bed hospital out in the middle of nowhere. There were some nights maybe I'm a little crazy busy, but, and when you're a multimodality tech at a critical access hospital or a small hospital, they should be paying you at the highest rate of pay. So, because some facilities, I've been at some facilities, I've had some administrators that tell me, if you got an x-ray tech working in CT, if they do a full shift in x-ray, you have to pay them x-ray wages, even though they're licensed in CT. And I'd be like, no, they learned how to do this. They're just helping out over here. And they're like, nope. If they're clocked into the x-ray cost center all day, they get x-ray pay. And I had to set up 2 separate job codes. And what does that mean? It means nobody wanted to help out in X-ray. It was stupid. So you should always get paid at your highest level of what you're skilled at, what you're registered at. If you learn ultrasound and never get licensed, you can't really expect to get paid ultrasound wages. So good on you. Go get the MRI, then go get the echo and see how far you can take it. And my advice is just avoid management. I mean, getting into it yourself. It's cool, and I've learned a lot. 10 plus years in management, but you miss the patient care. You miss the autonomy of just doing your job and staying focused. And it doesn't matter what's happening out here. When you're in administration, man, there's people coming from all over the place with timelines and deadlines and problems and whatever. So thanks again, Teresa. If nobody else has any questions to put in the comments section, I'm surprised it's still going at 38 minutes. I've got kind of an iffy internet issue going on the past 2 days. So maybe I got disconnected at 28 minutes on the last one because of the internet. But I'd intended on leaving this thing on until the 1 hour mark and just answering any questions that came along. So thanks for tuning in. I'm going to mute the mic and go back to doing some of my desk work. And if you have any questions, post them in the comment section. Thanks. You know, that reminds me, I'm going to post something. Is it a post? I'm going to share a link in the comment section for Teresa. If I can find it on my blog. Hopefully you've been to my blog because I've been putting this stuff on there for 2 years. It's got 120 articles answering different questions. But I did a post probably 3 weeks ago or so about so annually the AHRA, that's the organization that administration belongs to. The AHRA puts out an annual survey to administrators asking a bunch of questions, and then they put out a report on what everybody thinks. And it's a really good insight. Here it is. It's a really good insight into what the administrators are thinking, because you don't know as a tech what's going on. I promise you. And lo and behold, it's exactly what you're asking about. So I wrote this. Oh, it doesn't have a date on it, but here's the link. And in this, I shared Medicare cuts 11% from diagnostic imaging in 2021. Are you ready for the radiology belt to tighten again? That's exactly what happens every time Medicare cuts reimbursement rates. The proposal for 2021 contains approximately 11% to get cut from diagnostic imaging in general. Now let's step back. You know how often I mention that you should check the radiology news sites to see what's going on in the radiology world. Sites like Aunt Minnie and Radiology Today are great insights into what is happening in our field. This post is coming partially from the Aunt Minnie article titled Medicare Proposes Major Cut to Radiology for 2021. And then I post some of the data. It says that diagnostic imaging is going to get an 11% decrease, IR is 9%, nuke med is 8%, and radiation oncology and therapy is 6% reduction. Overall, diagnostic radiology departments will see up to 11% decrease in reimbursement. My point in all this is to help you look at things through the eyes of an administrator, kind of like what we were just talking about, right? The director or manager over your department is going to be called into a meeting with the big boss. And here's how it's going to play out. And this is the big boss speaking. I'm assuming you've seen the cuts proposed to Medicare for 2021. How do you intend to reduce your expenses to counterbalance the reduction in revenues? And so here's the common ways that they can reduce the expenses. They can limit cross-training of staff because it costs money to train you in another modality and backfill you where you were supposed to be working. So there goes your cross-training. They can remove luxury items, which includes your water bottles. If you get a water service that brings those big gallon jugs in, those are always the first to go. Flatware and coffee in the break room, I've seen that disappear. Scrubs that used to be provided and laundered by the hospital, not anymore. So these are luxury items that they start to take away when reimbursement hits or starts hitting you. They will reduce the annual raises, the merit increases, cost of living increases, and or any other, if you get any at all. And they'll reduce staffing. They'll put less techs on at night, less on the weekends, etc. Defense is a good offense. That means take it among yourselves to figure it out for your boss. I can't believe this is exactly what I just said, and I forgot all about this article. So I listed on there. You can just go check out the article, Tress, if you're still around. But it lists some things you can do. If you know there's a shift that's overstaffed sometime, figure out how to better staff it. If 80% of the other departments already had their Culligan water service terminated, offer yours up. But rebuttal with an ad hoc filter, like can we at least add a Brita to the sink or something like that? If everyone agrees to rotate going home early on Fridays, then no one tech is going to lose an entire shift every Friday. Hey, great. I'm glad you're still there. Consider spearheading a lunch program that see to it that all techs get a lunch break. Radiology departments spend unwanted expenses on techs who are too busy. So I don't know if you've ever seen that, but there's always techs who punch no lunch. And they say, well, I was too busy. And if we look through somewhere during the day, they could have taken 30 minutes out to eat. So that's, if you know people that are doing that, it's not a lot you can do as a tech unless you're good friends with them. You can say, hey, look. Or you can start a program and be kind of anonymous about it. Well, we're starting this program where we're making sure everybody gets their lunch break. So I'll round and ask you if you had your lunch break. And if you didn't, I'm covering you, you're going, or whatever. So the point is there's several offensive maneuvers techs can make to help be proactive and save the department some money. These projects can help offset the reduction in reimbursement rates that are inevitably headed our way. The last thing you want as a tech is for a senior administrator who doesn't know radiology from astrology to tell your boss how to cut expenses. So help your leader out, brainstorm some ideas of pizza and beer some weekend, or over some pizza and beer. Brainstorm some ideas. I should change that to over. Don't wait until someone quits and your boss isn't allowed to replace them, because we've been there, right? Now you're stuck doing twice the work. And watch each other's back. Teams who work as a team, or techs who work as a team, have much higher employment satisfaction and less stress. You're all good at what you do, and you have a license to prove it, and don't let anybody tell you any different. So anyway, I'm glad you brought that up. I'd forgotten that I wrote that. I think I'll post that over at the Facebook group, because I'm sure there are other people like you that are going, oh, what does this mean? I already saw somebody say, should I even bother going to x-ray school because of all that? Yeah, you should still go to x-ray school. They're always going to try to pay us less. If you are worried about the CMS proposed reimbursement cuts to radiology services, aka MPFS 2021, check out my article. Because the other thing about that, and I said it in one of the articles, they also asked the administrators, do you think you're going to see a reduction in services? Do you think your department's going to grow? Do you think you're going to have the budget? Do you think you're going to be allowed to buy? Excuse me. You think they're going to let you buy the things you want to buy for your department? And interestingly enough, all these administrators from across the country said, we don't expect to get what we want. Let me see if I can find that one, because that makes my point that if you don't know what's going on in administration, you could get sucker punched, because this was a article proving that that administrators know they're not going to get the budgets they want because of COVID and everything. And I wonder if this is it. But they expect to grow their department. Let me find it. I can explain it better. Make the list. Labor to the company. Well, there's an article you ought to check out called 5 Reasons Rad Techs Are Being Forced to Take PTO. Because that'll explain to you why they're doing that to you. So there's that one. But I want to find the one where we went over the articles. Doggone. I'll use my search feature and see if I can find it. I don't want to get ahead of myself and say the wrong thing based on what I recollect. Put the HRA in there. The blog's really good for doing searches with keywords. If like I know it has something to do with the HRA. If I plug that in, I got a lot of stuff here about the HRA. Shoot. Well, I'm going to have to go from memory then. It was basically that I'm not going to get the machines that I asked for. I am going to grow my business without increasing my expenses, which is your pay. So how are they going to grow the department if they're not allowed to give you more hours? And basically it meant they're going to spread you out thinner. Shoot, what did I do with that? I'll see if I can find that, and I'll post it over in the Facebook group. So you guys will have to go over there to see it. It's that go to Facebook and do a search for groups called the Radiology Technologists group. And you know what? I can probably link to that too. Hang on. Yep, right there. Here's the group. Come on over. Make sure you answer the questions, because I don't let people in that don't answer the questions. I'll go from there. So I'm going to move on to another question. Hello, sir. I'm third student of Bachelor in Medical Imaging Technology. Could you please suggest me the topic for research? So I get that from students a lot. What can I write a paper about? My favorite topic right now is we're being urged to stop shielding our patients. And there's articles on my blog. If you do a search for the keyword shielding on my blog, you'll find it. The AAPM, which is the American Academy of Medical Physicists, one of their head physicists came out, and I interviewed her. There's a podcast on my blog too for an hour of her explaining why they want to stop shielding. Patricia Marsh, Dr. Patricia Marsh. She's been doing a bunch of studies and shows that there's no point in shielding anymore, and she tells why. And she presented to the ACR, the American College of Radiology, and the ACR agreed. So the ACR and the AAPM came out and said everybody should stop shielding. And the techs went bananas because we are beat over the head with why we should shield from the day we start X-ray school. And the funny thing is, if you understand what's going on and you read the scientific studies, it's true. We shouldn't be shielding anymore. But when you try to change people's minds or pull them out of their routine, I've seen posts about this in groups and they're just livid. I'm not going to give more dose to my patient, but they haven't read the studies. So that would be a good topic for you to do. I'll do you a solid here and pop over there and find APM is the search term into the radiologictechnologist.com. And here's my article, to shield or not to shield. So there's one. And if you're interested in a nutshell, they found that if we shield, we have these little gonadal shields that we place over a child's gonads if we're doing a hip x-ray. What we found is now that our machine, and this is part of what's changed in technology, and this is why things always have to change. We always have to look at what we're doing. The newer technology with the automatic exposure controls, the AECs, when it shoots an x-ray, it detects that lead in that gonad shield. And AEC is designed to what? It's designed to push more beam out to give more power if it's detecting a lot of impedance or resistance. So in other words, if you got a really fat person and you're trying to get to the spine, AEC picks that up and it puts out more energy so it can push through all that fat and get to the spine. Well, when you're x-raying that kid with the gonad shield, it hits, even if it hits a corner of that shield, it detects that density and increases the dose. So if the hip's over here and the gonads are here and you're x-raying right here, it's going to pick that up and increase the dose to everything. So yeah, there's nothing right here, but all this area just got like 3 times the amount of radiation than it would have if you hadn't shielded. So that's one thing, is that shielding is causing an increase in exposure to the rest of the body part. The second thing is studies show on average when techs use shielding, they don't do it right all the time. They accidentally cover up a part of the anatomy that's being x-rayed, and they take the x-ray and they look, oh crap, I got to repeat that. And they slide the shield over a little bit and do it again. So now you've double dosed the patient again. And that's recorded. There's studies to prove that. So you've got a machine giving you more dose if you shield. You got people having to repeat exams because they shielded. And then the last fact was just simply that our machines now give like 96% less radiation exposure than they did 30 years ago. They're just becoming that much more efficient. So when you add all 3 of those things up together, it's really more harmful to try to shield a patient. Now that doesn't mean the employees stay shielded because we're around it all day long. And people misunderstand that. They're like, well, I'm not going to stop wearing a shield. No, we're not talking about you, the employee. We're talking about the patient. And then people bring up CT and shielding on CT, and that's a whole other topic. But for general x-ray, if you read this, and there's hospitals that have already started policies to stop shielding. Hospitals have already put that policy out there. Now, that's an interesting problem for us as techs. You get a patient, you get ready to lay them down, they go, oh, you're taking my chest x-ray, where's my thyroid shield or whatever. You're like, oh, I don't have to do that anymore. And they're like, well, why not? Well, because it actually gives you more radiation, turns out, if we put that on. You're like, well, wait a minute. How much radiation have you been giving me over the last 20 years when I get these chests? So it's just a whole nother issue. So now hospitals not only have to bear the liability of patients get upset that they shouldn't have been shielded all along, but I mean, really they should have because of technology. But you see my point. It can't be on a burden on the tech. It's got to be on the hospital. The policy has to be put out by the hospital why we're not shielding, not the techs. It's not the techs making this up. It's got to be a hospital policy. And then you got to have a script of how you're going to explain this, because you can't stop and explain what I just explained to every patient. Maybe there's a thing you hand out here. This will explain why we're not. And really overall, if the patient throws a fit, you should still shield, is what the AAPM says. If the patient's going to have a cow, shield them, even though it's not what you're supposed to do. So this is still an ongoing topic. That's why it's so good for you to write about, because there's still, I don't know, it'd be an interesting poll. I bet you 50% or more of the techs are still going, I'm shielding because that's what I was taught to do. And my teacher was the best teacher ever, and I'm going to do what they told me 30 years ago. But you've got progressives that understand this is a field of science, and you have to constantly watch the scientific data. So so I hope that helps you out there, Prajal. And I gave you that link. And you know what I'll even do? I'll give you a link to the podcast where I interviewed, and it's on the blog. If you go under media at the top, to shield or not to shield, where's copy link address? Here's the podcast. Oh, now you're changing it to MRI. Okay. Well, you want something short and fun? Do the UV light tattoos. There are tattoos that you can only see under a UV light or a black light. They're like invisible tattoos. They're getting very popular because you can't, I mean, if you look really close, you can see it, but you can't really see it to the naked eye. So people are getting them and thinking nobody's going to know, unless I put a black light on it at the parties or whatever. But what these people don't know is the ink used in those UV tattoos has metallic particles. And so when the MRI techs are saying, do you have any tattoos? They're like, no. And they get in there and start getting burned because there's metallic residue in that ink. And they're like, oh. Oh, well, looks like you have a tattoo, don't you? That's one of the questions I asked you on my questionnaire. So we have to start educating patients that we're not just talking about traditional tattoos. It could be the UV tattoos as well. So that's an interesting one to me. There's also the magnetic eyelashes that women are wearing. That's another no-no for MRI. They've got, clip on, whatever, some type of magnetic eyelashes they're putting on, and those are no bueno in the MRI machine as well. So there's a couple ideas for you for MRI. Any other questions out there? This is good. Looks like we're helping a few people. We're at 58 minutes. I don't know when this thing's going to cut me off, but I'm glad we're able to answer some questions out there. Anything else for Jal? Am I saying that right? For Jal? Okay, well, I guess then we're almost at an hour. I guess I'll leave it on for a little bit longer, and I'll keep doing some work here. And if anybody pops in, oh, here's one. Hi, Sarah. Any tips for someone applying to the RadTech program in the spring? Oh, do I have tips for you? Oh my gosh. What's that old poem? Let me count the ways. How shall I help thee? Let me count the ways. Start with my blog. Go to the site map at the top. And that is where I kind of tried to start just writing the titles down. And at some point, I'll break it up by cat, give you a link. This is really helpful when you do it this way. But I've written articles about how to get in. In fact, here's one called Tips to Get Accepted into a RadTech Program. I'll hit you with that one too, by the way. But let's review some of it real quick. Let's see. Here's the best way to get accepted into the RadTech school of your choice. And that's a whole other topic, Sarah, is how to find the right school, which is a whole other post. I think I've got a video on that too, because there's public and private. There's cheap and expensive, and sometimes expensive is the way to go. But there's a lot of things you need to ask. In fact, make sure you go. It's in the comment section. Go sign up at our Facebook group, because somebody just asked me. They have an interview today at Pima Medical Institute, and they said, "What are some questions I can ask?" And I gave her 9 of them. So go to the Facebook group and sign up. Make sure you answer all the questions and get in. Cause I don't let people in. Don't take the time to answer the easy questions. But when it comes to getting in, do your research. Find out if you know anybody that works there. Do you know any past or present students in the program? So exploit everything you know about the school. If you find out that somebody you went to high school with, uncle works there, reach out. Hey, Uncle John, I'm interested in going there, and I'd like some more information on the school. What can you share with me? Anybody you can find. And one way to do that is to go to LinkedIn and plug in the school's name up there and hit a search, and it should take you to the school's page, and then it'll show you who all is a friend of the page or whatever, or a connection, and you can start kind of scrolling through. But I've used that method to apply for jobs at hospitals. I can find the CEO, the head of the imaging department, the CFO, then I can look at their Facebook page and see what they like and don't like. I mean, you could really work this thing in your favor. Next thing is to call the school and see if they have an entrance exam. The one I went to for X-ray had the Wonderlic, and you can find those all over the internet, so you can see all the questions ahead of time to make sure you get a good score on it. Make sure your resume is polished and up to date, because they're going to ask you for a resume, and I've got a whole nother article on writing resumes for X-ray techs. Well, you won't be an X-ray tech yet, but I do have an article about writing resumes for X-ray techs. So you can do a search for resumes. I'm a non-traditional student. The people I've spoken to rave about the program. Also, shadowing opportunities have been hard. I keep getting bumped. Yeah, you're gonna. So I'll quit going over the article because you can go read that. It's the one I sent you a link to. But things are really screwy in our world right now. It's unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it. Some hospitals don't ever want anybody else in the hospital as far as just looking around. because you've got patient information everywhere, which is private and protected by the law. So back in the day, we used to let high schools walk through the department for like a high school tour. Now you can't do that. So you have to, usually there's paperwork you can sign saying you promise not to divulge any HIPAA documents that you may see. But you just gotta keep calling them, asking for a shadow, tell them that you understand HIPAA privacy and you won't divulge anything you see. And so there's two kinds of shadowing that you need to know about. One is getting right into the middle of everything and seeing it all. And that's where you'll see private information. But you can also do a shadow where you just walk down the halls. And I know it sounds kind of lame, but hear me out. So let's say you really want to get in and start looking around, but they're giving you this stuff about, COVID and whatever. Say, how would you feel if I just came in and a technologist just walked me through the halls, but not into the control areas? The control rooms are where the technologists sit. That's where all the data and the patient information is. But if you got somebody to give you a tour down the hallway, they can take you through the double doors and go, well, this is where our x-ray department is. And if we go in, what you would see is 4 separate rooms. One of them is a fluoro table, which is this kind of an x-ray, and the other 3 are standard x-ray. And we bring patients in over there, put them in that room, change them into a gown, and then tell the tech that the patient's ready. Then the tech goes and gets them, brings them in, shoots the x-ray, puts them back to change the gown, and then helps them out. And so you start to learn how the workflow is, and that's important to understand the workflow. It's nice to see the equipment and the fancy stuff, but you don't have to. If they won't let you, get a tour, and that way it'll show you the layout of the department, where everything is. Hopefully they'll explain how they get patients in and out. And then you've got a tech right there that you can ask questions to. Do you like your job? Do you like your hours? What kind of hours are there? Are you allowed to talk about your pay, or are you at least happy with your pay? Were you able to cross-train in other modalities, or do they hire people from outside to fill those roles? So if you can just try to get in for a shadow, and in that sense of just getting a tour, but not necessarily going into the rooms, then you should still get a ton of information that way. And you can still put down on your application that you shadowed. Now, the third option would be, can I just meet with the tech out in the foyer at a table at the Starbucks or whatever? And can I just have 15 minutes with a tech to ask them a few questions? And then you could still kind of pepper them with the same, do you like your job? Do you worry about computers taking over, artificial intelligence, whatever. That's a whole nother conversation about what you should be asking. But go to my blog and look for the tips. There's 2 or 3 different articles that there was a guy that I lovingly called Jackrabbit Joe. He ended up becoming a good friend of mine. His name was Joe. And he wanted to work where I was the manager. It was it was 3 hours away, but he wanted to work. I was up in the mountains, it was a beautiful place. And he was down in the valley, pollution, crime, blah, blah, blah. He was in Phoenix. I was in Flagstaff. There you go. So he started by sending emails, and he actually started hitting my director first. He said, hey, my name's Joe. I'm a student in the program, but when I get out, I really want to come up there and work. I'd like to come up and just maybe get a tour, maybe meet you for lunch, ask you some questions. Would that be okay? I know you're super busy. And he got to know the director. And then when he came up to meet the director, he got to know me, and then the director got fired. And so Joe continued to come up for different things. He would come up and go to our Christmas party. He would come up and just to say hi, not to be weird or whatever, but and he would follow up with emails. He would send me at the end of the semester. He'd go, hey, I just finished my 3rd semester. Here's my grades. Things are going great. I really look forward to blah, blah. And I practically knew the dude when he graduated. In fact, I held a spot for him. So, if you're going to show that much passion about what you do and wanting to be a part of my team and come up and hang out, and I like you, if you're a total jerk, then I know I definitely don't want to hire you. But if you're being professional and polite and courteous, and Joe was awesome. He ended up being a great tech, advanced very quickly. There's an article. If you search my blog, do a search for Jackrabbit Joe, and I detail all the stuff he did that got him in good graces and guaranteed him a job, if you ask me. So that's another thing. But just go, if you want to know how to get in, go to the blog, theradiologictechnologist.com, and do a search for school or accepted or jackrabbit or, anything, any kind of keyword. Or the hard way is just to go through article by article. Only about 120 or 130 articles, but information about how to choose the right school, how to pick your clinicals, because that's very important. You don't, hopefully, there's probably some programs that send you where they want to send you, but hopefully they'll let you pick where you go, because that's crucial, because your clinical site is the job interview. So if you get stuck at clinicals at some place you'd never want to work, you didn't get to meet anybody at the place you do want to work. You want to try and get your clinicals at the place where you want to work. So there's articles about how to pick your clinicals, the strategy behind it, a lot of stuff. So go check that out. I hope that helped you, Sarah. Looks like we're pretty caught up on the questions. Anybody else? I've got articles about how to pay for school. I list about 10 different ways you can get funding for X-ray school. I wrote an article, the schools always tell you that you can't work while you go to school, which is bogus. A lot of us have to work, right? We have bills to pay, but they don't want you to work because they want you to do as good as possible, get graded on how well their students do. So they'll tell you that you can't work, but that's crap. I've always worked more than one job. All through X-ray school, all through ultrasound school. Ask my kids. Anything else? Anybody still on? Say hi. Okay. Well, I'm going to mute and keep working. And if anybody has any questions, throw them in the comment section, and we'll keep going. We'll see how helpful we can be to everybody out there. Oh, there she is. Yeah, COVID has really made my searches difficult for shadowing. Yeah. They send us at this school for clinicals. I bet you're talking about. However, rural areas, all the hospitals are 1.5 hours away, and all but one are part of the same healthcare network. Yeah. So, yeah, nothing you can do about that. So, you can, hopefully you get to ask, hopefully you get to say which ones you go to. But so when I went to Pima Medical Institute in Mesa, Arizona, and they had probably, 30 clinical sites, 40 clinical sites. They'd write it on the chalkboard, and they put everybody's name in a hat, and the teacher would pull one out and say, Ron, and then you'd go up there and mark which one you wanted. So whether or not your school does that, I don't know, but it would behoove you, to use my Scrabble word of the day, to find out who all the clinical sites are. And that's another thing you can ask in your interview, or you could say, would somebody be able to email me a list of the clinical sites that we might be sent to, so that I can start to work on daycare or travel plans or whatever. And that'll really trigger them in the positive, because wow, you're looking for the future here and how you're going to handle your schedule. They love that stuff. But you get a list of those clinical sites, and then you start to look at each one. Like, I wanted a level 1 trauma and a smaller hospital and an outpatient clinic. And so I ended up at, it was called Desert Samaritan, which became a banner hospital down there. Desert Sam was a level 1 trauma. And I got Mesa General, which was a little critical access hospital. And then I also got to rotate through Chandler Regional, which is called Dignity or something else now. And it was kind of in between those two levels. So I got to see all the level 1 trauma stuff, which is really cool. And I also got it's the smaller hospitals where you have the unusual opportunities. Like, that's where I learned CT. I learned CT as an X-ray student, because my clinical instructor there at the hospital was cool enough to teach it to me. So when I graduated X-ray school, I got a CT job right out of X-ray school. At that place I did my clinical rotation at. So try to get a list of your clinical sites and start researching those, so that if you do get to pick where you go, you have, and do like choices, if I'm picked first, go here. If I'm picked second, go here. If I'm picked third, have backup plans, because you never know when your name's going to get drawn or whatever. And if they don't let you pick, still do it. And then see if you can find, if you don't get the ones you want, see if you can find the people that have them, and approach them and say, hey, you got Banner Desert, and it's like 5 minutes from my house, and they stuck me way across town. Is there any chance you'd be interested in switching or, something like that, or whatever excuse you want to give? Offer them $50. I've done that for trying to get rid of my shifts before. I'm like, hey, if you'll take my Thanksgiving Day shift, I'll give you $100. So get creative. Try to get the clinical sites you want, because that's where you want to learn the most material from. Your classes just help you pass the board exams. It's your clinical rotations that teach you how to do the job. So you're better off if you do a clinical rotation where you want to work in the future. Another train of thought is if you really think you're awful, if you have a lot of anxiety, you think you're going to screw things up, go mess up somewhere else. And then once you know everything, then go apply where they don't know you. That's another method. I say go where you want to go right from the beginning, because they know you're a student. But there's a lot of anxiety out there. I wrote an article about the shy people. A person said, I'm super shy. Would I ever make it in radiology? And I said, absolutely. This person was like, I don't really like talking to people, and what do I do? So I wrote a whole article about how to deal with that. Pima, we had sites in Yuma, which was, 3 hours away. But if they put you at those far out places, they usually give you room and board. They typically don't make you pay for housing if the school's making you go hours away. Now in Phoenix, they expected you to drive an hour and a half, 2 hours, because that's just how long it took to get across the valley, and it sucked. But you do what you got to do. Try to switch with people if you can. Hopefully they'll let you pick, and you get a nice little strategy. I picked a level 1 trauma because I wanted trauma and it was close by, and I picked Mesa General because I had heard. I'm pretty sure I had heard that they had weekend shifts. Yes, I did. They allowed students on the weekends, and I had to work for them. So and nobody wanted to go there. They're like, oh, that's a little hole in the wall. Why would you want to go there? I'm like, because I could work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and get all my clinical hours in and still work during the week because I have a family to support. And it was that place that trained me in CT. And anyway, I could probably go on and on about that. But does anybody else have any other questions? I really appreciate this, because I love radiology and I love talking about it and sharing it. And it really frustrates me when I see websites that are calling us technicians and saying our school lasts 6 months, and all this crap information on the internet that's leading everybody the wrong way. I'm glad we have this forum to come out and share truth, at least my truth, and answer questions. So don't forget, there's a Facebook group where you can, there's 1,200 techs on there and administrators that'll answer your questions. And you can always ask me the question to be shared anonymously, and I can put the question on. I'm having a problem with this other tech who never wants to get off their butt. What should I do? And I can post that for you anonymously. So there's the blog that has 120 something articles answering questions. It's got 2 podcasts, which are awesome. I did a 1 hour interview of an x-ray tech who does mobile x-ray, which is a whole other job we can do. And she is the mobile x-ray tech in Hollywood. So she gets to drive around all day and do x-rays of the Hollywood movie stars and stuff. So I interviewed her for an hour. It was very entertaining. And you should go check out the podcast. I just haven't had a lot of time to do the podcast. There's so much else going on. And it's really hard to edit those things, because you if you interview somebody for an hour, you got to cut out all the dead spaces. And sometimes you start talking about things off topic or things you don't want released, But the blog is the radiologictechnologist.com. There's memes on there if you need a break. Check out the radiology memes. I got hundreds of them on there. There's resources for you. There's quizzes that you can take free over almost every class. I took probably about 6 months and took a bunch of x-rays and labeled them. I blanked out the labels, and then I labeled them so you can look at it and study your anatomy on the x-rays. I put on there links to like my favorite leads, my favorite shoes. I took a poll in the Facebook group one time, what's your favorite shoe for x-ray? And of course, 80 techs had 30 different favorites. But I compiled that, and I put an article on the blog about the best shoes for x-ray techs based on what everybody said. And it's probably about time to redo that now, because and I did another article about how in love I fell with Hocus because I hadn't even tried Hocus. I was all about my Brooks Ghosts, which a lot of people were too. But I tried on these goofy looking Hocus, and these things are so comfortable. It's ridiculous. So anyway, check out the blog, the radiologictechnologist.com. You're already on the channel. Make sure you like and subscribe. I'm always putting stuff up here. Um, and the Facebook group, the Radiologic Technologist group on Facebook. And between those three things, if you can't find the answer to your question, then there isn't an answer to your question. All right. About an hour 18. I got some other work to do. If you have any questions, post them. I'm going to mute my mic and get a little bit of work done. Thanks again, Sarah and Prajal and Teresa, Laura, everybody who stopped by. And there was a gentleman on the first stream that I screwed up that asked a question about MRI. Thank you for stopping by, and we'll see if anybody else pops in. You're welcome, Sarah, anytime.
Just checking in. It says there's 5 people on, but I don't know if that's accurate. If you have any questions, just post them in the comment section. I'm just kind of having open hours, is what I'm going to call this. I'm thinking about doing it on a regular basis, for 1 hour a day or something, or maybe a couple hours on a Saturday morning, where I just leave a camera on while I'm working, and anybody that has questions about radiology can chime in. I've been a director and in administration for over 10 years, so even if techs have questions about being a tech or how to deal with the boss or whatever, you can hit me up with that kind of stuff too. Or if you're an administrator, I've done several multi-million-dollar projects. I'm happy to share all that administration stuff too. JB says, I don't know if anybody asked this, but should I consider a program that does not have JSERT? Yeah, actually, was that just asked? It was, I don't remember if it was this one. Yeah, it was this one, Laura Ann, the very top of the comment section. It's a very common question, so don't worry about it. The program director told me he needed a master's for them to get. Oh, no, I don't think so. So scroll up, and I linked to the ARRT website that lists all the accreditation bodies that the ARRT approves of. So you can be an X-ray program and not be J-certed. You can be K-HEPT, and the ARRT will recognize that. So the easiest thing to do is find out who the school's accredited by and call the ART and ask, do you acknowledge this accrediting body? They call it a mechanism. Do you accept this accrediting mechanism? And will I be able to sit for the ART exams if I graduate from here? That's for sure going to get you the right answer. Otherwise, go to that link up there and look and see if that accrediting body's on that link. And if it is, then you're good to go. If it's not, I probably wouldn't go there. There's not a lot of programs that are offering masters right now, unless they're saying, I wonder if they're saying one of the teachers has to have a master's. That might be true. Yeah, I think you have to have a master's to teach in an X-ray program at this point. Maybe that's what the program director was trying to tell you. But no, they don't have to be J-certed. Go check out that link, and it'll talk about what they need. I mentioned too, this thing should be saved, so you can always go back and just re-watch it again from the beginning. But I mentioned I've got articles on the blog about how to find the right program to go to, how to check them out, how to get in, tips and tricks on how to get in, what you need to know about your clinicals, all that kind of stuff. We talked about a little bit of all that today. I always have to check my mic because I've done this a couple times with my mic off, and it sucks. Any other questions, guys? Cool. You're welcome. You also don't need, a lot of people ask, should I get an associate's or a bachelor's as a tech? You don't need a bachelor's. There's some programs that graduate you with a certificate, and I guess some that give you an associate's. I've only seen the associate's version, but I'm pretty sure at some point they said every program needs to graduate students with an associate's minimum. And then they started working on, now there's actually programs where you can graduate with a bachelor's. I got my bachelor's somewhere else. I actually got my bachelor's before I even started X-ray school. But if you can get a bachelor's in radiology or really anywhere, the master's programs, the MSRS, the Masters of Science in Radiologic Science, are being offered more and more around the country. I took my MSRS at Weber State, and all I had to have was a bachelor's and an active RT license. And it was only like 16 grand or 18 grand for that master's. That's a really cheap master's, and it's all online. And I say online, but you had to go there. It's completely different now with COVID. But when it's online, you have to go there on a Thursday, Friday, once a semester, and they booked you from sun up to sundown in classes. And that's how they kind of qualified you as an on-campus student so that you got cheaper tuition that way. But basically, you would just go there for a ton of lectures, take all your tests online, do your clinical stuff wherever you're from, and got the MSRS at Weber State. And there's other places that do MSRSs. And the MSRS actually, even though it was radiology focused, got me into a doctorate program. I'm working on a doctorate. It's an EDD at Nebraska Methodist, completely online again. We're supposed to go there, just like Weber State did, but we're not because of COVID. So it's completely online. It's about $30,000, which is really cheap for a doctorate. And they accepted, in fact, 2 of my classes from my MSRS wiped out the classes in the doctorate. So I don't have to take them. I got credit for it. How awesome is that? One of them was statistics. I got out of statistics. I hated that class. So depending on what you want to do, you can, X-ray allows you to go all the way up to doctorate. And there are X-ray techs that become medical doctors. There are X-ray techs that go to nursing school and vice versa. Excuse me. There's just so much you can do in this field. It's crazy. You can run off into a mobile company and never set foot in a hospital. You can work night shift and never have to see administration except for your monthly staff meetings. That's what I like to do. I was on the night shift for like 10 years. You can cross-train into CT, MRI, ultrasound, nuclear. Well, actually, with the online programs, you can cross-train into nuke med. Now, we just did one a couple of years ago. Somebody went to the Weber State online program for nuclear medicine, did their clinicals. It was an X-ray tech. Did their clinicals here at our hospital and did the online stuff at Weber State and got their nuke med license. Same thing with ultrasound, Weber State. Online ultrasound classes, do your clinicals at your own hospital, and within 2 years, it's for your boards and you're good. So we were naming all the modalities. So we hadn't touched on mammograms, mammography, or DEXA scanning, which is its own, still pays well, super easy. Don't get mad at me for saying DEXA techs out there. Can you lay on the table so I can start the machine and I'll be back in 20 minutes, or if even that. So I'm just kidding. What else is there? Interventional radiology. You want to talk about? That's like working in the operating room. You're literally the first assist to the radiologist who's putting in ports and stents and transhepatic shunts and taking biopsies of lungs and kidneys and ablations. Interventional radiology is way cool, and it's one of the highest paid modalities. And you can go from X-ray to IR, boom, one jump. If your hospital lets you, if your director is cool like I was. I had an X-ray tech who'd been out of school for like 9 months, but I put it up open for interviews. I said, I'm building an IR team. I need 5 people who wants to be interviewed. I think I got 5 people who applied. One of them had only been out of X-ray school for like 9 months. So they all got it. They all got cross-trained. They all immediately jumped from, I don't know, $22-23 an hour to like 40 or something stupid. But they're worth their weight in gold in the IR. There's some life-saving stuff in there. What do you think of X-ray tech versus radiation therapists as career choices? It seems like there's more jobs in it. Oh, yeah. So think about that. And you may not know the environment. So let's say you got a hospital with 200 beds. That's a standard, there's hospitals with 1,000 beds. But a standard typical city hospital, 200 to 300 beds, you're going to need 50 to 70, maybe more X-ray techs, right? You got an attached cancer center, or at least one in town somewhere. How many radiation therapists do you think that cancer center needs? Maybe 3, maybe 2. So you tell me, where's their job security? How hard are you going to be competing for that job if there's only 3 therapists? Now, the job's cool. It's way cool. And it's its own, I think it might even be 3 years by now. I'm not sure. And that typically, believe it or not, that's outside of radiology. That's not in my department. The cancer center is its own business, its own entity, may even be somewhere else, may even be its own company, not even in the hospital. So radiation therapists typically don't work for the radiology department. It's actually an offshoot, kind of like the cath lab. You can be an x-ray tech and be a cath lab tech, kind of the same thing, an x-ray tech that runs the table in the cath lab, but you're not in radiology unless the director runs cardiology and radiology, which happens. But you can be an x-ray tech and go work in the cath lab and watch people getting their hearts stented, which is way cool. And those guys make good money. Those guys make really good money. And then a lot of it comes from being on call and getting called in all night long, 5 days a week. So the burnout in the cath lab is like 6 months. People last 6 months and they're like, I'm done. Please, somebody take it. But radiation therapy is super high on job satisfaction because you're saving cancer patients. I mean, come on. I mean, you're trying to anyway. You do what the medicine allows. You're not saving every patient, but it's a terrific career path. I've known some guys that have done it, gals that have done it, that love it. But you asked about the career choices. Not going to be as many options, obviously. But again, it all goes back to your clinical rotation. If you do a clinical rotation and get to know them really well and show them that you're a hard worker and you're really good at it, if there's an opening, why wouldn't they hire you? Because they just spent 2 years training you on their stuff. But maybe they don't have an opening. So you got to go play x-ray tech somewhere and wait for them to get an opening. So I don't know if that's worth the roll of the dice, really. That's up to you. You can always do both, right? You can always learn x-ray, get a job at radiation therapy school, and if there's nothing open, you can PRN a tech till something does come up. But you got to start worrying about losing your competency. Like I rolled out a thing once. Vascular lab is usually separate from radiology. Sometimes it's not, but it falls under cardiology. See, cardiology and radiologists don't like each other because they do a lot of the same procedure, and they don't want the other one doing what the other one's doing because, for one, that makes them less book, but for two, if they're not doing much in their department, it starts to make them look bad. So those radiology and cardiology never get along. The doctors, techs, we're fine because we're techs. But where was I going with that? Shoot. Well, I guess I was just saying an x-ray tech can work in the cath lab and be a cath lab tech, and you can moonlight in both. You can do PRN and x-ray and work full-time in cath lab, vice versa, whatever. But in the cath lab, it's a little bit different. It's one type of table. It's got kind of two joysticks on it where you move a table and move the C-arm around the patient, and you may be helping assist with handing certain instruments to the physician. Usually there's another person that's helping. One person in charge of the tray and handing stuff. So there's a table. Let's say that's the table, and there's a C-arm around it that's doing the imaging. On the far side, away from the doctor, is the nurse who's right next to the IV pole and making sure the patient is sedated or whatever they need to do. If they start to cronk, they can shoot something into the saline bag and bring their heart back or whatever. But there's a nurse kind of hanging out over there. There's a cath lab tech helping give everything to the doctor and hand them stuff and all that. And then there's the rad tech at the end of the table, moving the table around, doing whatever they got to do. Because as the doctor's either inserting the cath lab wire into the patient, starts in the groin or the radius or radial or wherever they're going in at, IJ, they've got to push it up to the part of the heart where they want, and they do that. The x-ray tech's got to follow it with the camera so they can see where that line is at, and then he squirts dye into it to show where the end of it is, and that's your x-ray showing that. So the x-ray tech's crucial. But that's what the cath lab is. And looks like you said never heard of interventional. Nope, not a course. It's on-the-job training. So over time, schools are starting to kind of get wise to this cross-training thing, and they're like, hey, a lot of people that go into x-ray want to learn how to do MRI. We could put together a little MRI course that teaches them about protocols and the dangers of MRI and that kind of stuff. And I bet hospitals will back it up, because then if they can send an employee to the class, they'll know more when they start to cross-train them in their department. So MRI courses have popped up, CT courses have popped up. The CT certification now requires that you get like 16 hours of education to sit for the board exam. And so a lot of colleges are offering these little 2 8-hour classes or whatever, where they talk about protocols, maybe contrast reactions, stuff like that. But there's nothing really out there yet for interventional. There are weekend mammography classes that just show you the basics. You got to go get your own competencies done somewhere. But there's not really anything out there for IR. That's still kind of on the job. I'm sure there will be somebody will figure out it makes money and they'll do a weekend IR seminar or something. But it's all classroom stuff. They don't do anything on actual patients. These MRI and CT classes and stuff like that. So the interventional it's an operating room. It's a table that the patient lays on, and it's a C-arm, just like that cath lab that takes fluoroscopy images, which is real-time X-ray. It's like a movie, an X-ray movie, where you step on a button and it just turns on and stays on, so you let go of the button. So as you're advancing a needle or contrast, you got the live fluoro, you can see the blush of the contrast. You see the wire going up the groin or whatever. So in that IR room, it's kind of like the cath lab. You got the radiologist doing the procedure instead of the cardiologist in the cath lab. And then there's usually a tech helping the radiologist, handing them instruments and stuff. And then you've got a tech operating the table and everything, because you not only have the table and the C-arm going, but there's a big, huge, giant 90-inch dual screen monitor thing, because you put an image up in one corner of what the radiologist is doing, like what he sees on the fluoroscopy. And then in another corner, he may have an ultrasound body part that he's looking at. Another corner, he could scroll through and look at CT images of that body part. Part of the plan is, if you're going to go on a biopsy of liver, you want to see what it looks like from different angles. Well, you may have an ultrasound of the liver, a CT of the liver, another screen that shows you real time what you're looking at with your catheter. So there's a lot of stuff going on in there, but it's typically just two techs helping the rad. Sometimes there's a nurse if there's a sedation. If there's no sedation, there's no nurse. So interventional is really cool. It could be something as simple as a biopsy of a thyroid. Actually, you can even do that in an exam room. But IR can do something simple and something that could take a couple of hours, several hours, as a matter of fact, depending on how bad it is when they get in there. So I hope that answers your question about interventional. Like I said earlier, I cross-trained somebody that had only been out of X-ray school for 9 months, and she's doing great still. But most places, you kind of have to work your way up in seniority to get to those. It's just like you usually have to start off PRN at the hospital just to get your foot in the door. And then when somebody quits or moves up to another shift or whatever, then you take the night shift to go to full time. And then once somebody retires off the day shift, you get off night shift to work the day shift. So, there's a whole lot of ins and outs to the radiology department. I'm happy to share all that stuff with you guys. Just throw the questions in the comment section. Maybe I'll do this a couple times a week as time allows. I got lucky today. I'm working from home and everybody's in school, and my wife's working. She's a tech. She's doing her 8-hour shift. So I'm like, well, why don't I turn on the camera? And if anybody has any questions, I'll answer them. And so that's kind of what we're doing. So I'm glad, Sarah, you're welcome. I'm glad it's helpful. JB, if you heard me say something you don't know what it is, just comment and I'll talk some more about it. If you want to talk money, because everybody always likes to talk about money, your IR is one of your highest paid techs. It's a specialty. Not everybody knows how to do it. It's not as common. You don't have as many IR techs. And the thing about IR, a department that has an IR department, a radiology department that has an IR department in it, typically has to have it running, at least be available 24 hours. They may only work 8 to 5 or 7 to 4, but then after that, when they close up shop, they're on call. And so because a lot of radiology departments spoil their doctors in the hospital, and the IR departments put in PICC lines. You guys know what PICC lines are, right? It's how you give medicine to a patient. You can't start an IV because their veins are too small, or they're an IV drug user and they've killed all their veins. You can put a PICC line in and it goes right to the SVC, and you put a little adapter on there and you tape it all up nice and keep it clean. And then whenever the nurse has to give them drugs, they just shoot it in there and it's delivered that way. Well, radiology has spoiled a lot of doctors, and that radiology will put those in the IR lab. You can do it portably. I actually got trained in it. I used to go to patients' rooms and do PICC lines. X-ray techs can do that. That's a whole other thing nobody even talks about. X-ray techs can put PICC lines in, and that could be a full-time job depending on the size of your hospital. So that's way cool. But IR, you do your 8 to 5, but then you're on call. And if somebody needs a PICC line put in at 2 a.m. because they need a medicine stat and nobody can get an IV started, the IR team gets called in to come in and put a PICC line in. And if the techs aren't trained to do it and the rad has to do it, he doesn't want to come in at 3 a.m. to put a PICC line in. So it can get kind of ugly. But my point is, IR techs make a lot of money hourly, and you can really soak up that money with being on call. Because I don't know if you guys know, but being on call is a whole nother money ball that gets thrown at you. $20 an hour as a tech, that's your base pay. So if you come in and work 8 to 5, you get $20 an hour for that 8 to 5. But if you go on call, meaning you've got your phone, and if they need help at night when there's only a couple people working, they can call you if you're on call, which means you can't go drinking, you can't be more than 30 minutes away from the hospital. You're really kind of stuck. But they pay you $3 an hour just to be on call. And so what they'll do is they'll put you on call Friday night at 7 p.m. until Monday morning at 7 a.m. So you're talking like 48 hours or more of call. So let's just say 50 hours at $3 an hour. You just made $150 over the weekend just to have your phone on. And that's just for starters. If they call you and you come in, gold standard across the board, and you'll find one every now and then that's trying to screw everybody, but across the board, for the most part, you get time and a half times 2 hours minimum. So let's say you're on call for x-ray and one guy's there at night, because that's 5-car pileup comes in and he's got all these x-rays to do. Can you be like, Ron, I'm getting hammered. Can you come in and help me get caught up, please? I'm like, cool, I'm on my way. 10 minutes to get to the hospital. I get my scrubs on. I jump in. I knock out a bunch of x-rays. Say it takes me an hour to get caught up. I clock back out. I go back home. But they pay me 2 hours for every callback. Now, remember, I said it's time and a half. So if I'm at $20 an hour, that means I'm at $30 an hour when I'm on call. And you have to pay me a minimum of 2 hours at $30 an hour. That's $60. So now I make $60 every time I run down there to help my buddy out at night. And the way it works, it depends on the rules at your hospital, and it's been this way for a long time, is if you get called down there and you get your buddy all caught up and you get out the door and off campus and they call you again, that's a whole nother 2 hours. So you can see where this can snowball. You can see where it can be used. You can say, hey, doc, I know you got that thing down there in the ER. Can you wait and order it in like 20 minutes? I'll be right back, whatever. And that happens. It happens all the time. So, in any given night, you can get 3, 4, 5 callbacks at $60 a pop. And that's one night on top of your shift. Now, the downside is you worked all day, we're up all night on call, and then work the next day again. So it'll wear you down. I did that for years. I triple dipped at one point. We could get into that at some time. But when I was in ultrasound, I was on call for 3 different hospitals in the same system. But they were so hard up for somebody to take call that they knew I was on call, and they weren't super happy, because what if 2 call you at the same time, but they didn't have anybody else take the call. So I just worked out a real good system. I knew all the doctors, and only twice did 2 call me at the same time, and I would just say, hey, Brian, I know you got a gallbladder, but I also have this fetal demise over at the other place. Do you mind if I run over there and do that, and I'll come to you as soon as possible? And he was like, yeah, no, this patient's had this problem for years. Take your time. Don't worry about it. And so you could really make a ton of money just being on call, which is a whole other aspect of being a tech. So there you go. There's a whole other thing that isn't really known out there. You can just work your 8 to 5. And I've got posts about this on the blog if you want to go read it. You work your 8 to 5 for your hourly. And then the other little gem is that's just day shift. Your base salary only applies to day shift. Hospital administrators, hospital human resource departments know that most people want to work the day shift because they want to be off at night to be home with their family or watch football or whatever. Not as many people want to work the second shift, the swing shift, the 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. or 2 p.m. to midnight shift. So they have to offer you more money to incentivize you to go there. So if you get hired at $20 an hour, the hospital will give you an extra $3 an hour to work that second shift across the board. So if you work 40 hours a week on that second shift, you're making $23 an hour times $40 an hour. And if you're making that and you're on call, you're time and a half in that and times 2 hours. And then the third shift, what we call graveyards or graves or overnights, not many people want to work those. Some of us do. I loved it. But most people want their day shift. Can't handle being up at night, messes up your sleep schedule. Yeah, it does, but get over it. They pay you a whopping bunch more to work the night shift. And how you get paid $7 more an hour, $7 more an hour, and administration's nowhere to be found. I mean, does it get any better than that? You don't have bosses walking around because they're at home in bed, right? So I hung out on the night shift forever, and used it to study. I take naps. If your place has a sleep room, which is very common, you go to sleep. They call you when they get something. We used to have, before it all went digital on computers, our printers would print off the orders on the printer. So if you took your soda pop can and set it right on the edge of the printer, where that paper would come, that paper would push the soda pop can off the printer to hit the floor and make a bunch of noise. That was called a rad tech alarm. So we'd go sleep in the back, and when we'd hear the can rattle, we knew we had an order, and that's when we would get up and go down to the ER and shoot our X-ray or whatever. So I don't know how you do it now with digital. I guess you just have the ER call you, or maybe mirror your work list on your phone or something. I don't know, but great job, great career, lots of options, lots of money to be made. What else? So there's hourly, there's shift differentials, there's being on call. That's all I can think of. You know, you're earning PTO while you're working. So, how about 7 on, 7 off? You ever heard of those? 7 on, 7 off shift means you typically work 7 days in a row, and then you get 7 days off. And they actually like that. I don't know why. I think it's ridiculous. The hospitals like it. Well, some do, some don't. It's something that they came up with to fill hard to fill spots. So if you had like second shift and graveyards again, if they can't get people to stay on graveyards, they'll say, look, if you'll work the graveyards, you work 7 on, 7 off, and you work 10-hour shifts. And you think, well, wait a minute, 7 on at 10, that's only 70 hours. How are you getting your full 80 hours? They give it to you. They give you the extra 10 hours for free. So you work 7 on, you get an extra 10 free hours, and then you get 7 days off. So when you take vacation, when you burn 1 week of PTO, you get 3 weeks off. Plus you're on the night shift, so you're making more money than anybody else in the department. So if you can land a 7 on, 7 off, try to find that, because there's a lot of hospitals aren't doing it anymore, because they, if somebody in quality comes out and says, oh, they're 7-10 in a row, they're so tired, there's no way they can be catching every little detail that they need to be catching, and it's poor work-life balance. I'm like, no, it's not. They love it. Ask any tech that has 7 on, 7 off. They'll fight tooth and nail to keep that shift. We even had some hybrids that were 7-hour shifts for part-timers. 7 on, 7 off, doing it 7 hours. I can't remember the details, but it was second hour in CT. It's usually CT that does it for some reason. I don't know why. But 7 on, 7 off, where else are you going to find? What other job are you going to find that at? Yeah, where else are you going to find 7 on, 7 off? So first of all, here was my thing when I was looking into all this to begin with. Where can I go to the shortest amount of school to make the most amount of money and then work the least amount of hours to earn it, right? So it's 2 years for x-ray school to make $23 an hour. And if I work 3 12s, that's 36 hours. I'm done for the week. I get 4 days off a week. So that's what I did. I did 3 12s at night, right out of x-ray school, 2005. I was at $27 an hour because I got hired at 19, but I got the shift diffs for, I didn't mention that. So there's shift diff for second shift, like $2 or $3 an hour. Shift diff, which stands for shift differential. Shift diff for night shift, which is like $7 an hour. And then there's a weekend shift diff because nobody wants to work the weekend. So if you take the third shift, weekend shift, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday, you get even more for working the weekend. So I was up to $27 an hour right out of school all the way back to 2005 because I took the Friday, Saturday, Sunday night shift where I was working. 3 12s, I had 4 days off a week. I was off all during the week to do whatever I wanted to do. So a lot of these little caveats, nobody tells you. Kind of start walking through blind. Like, honestly, it was in a school when I found out about Barry Minimus. I'm like, what? We're going to put what? Where? Because obviously they're not going to put that in the brochure, right? Who's going to sign up to do that? So there's a lot of things that aren't explained. And then there's a lot of BS out there on websites that have no business talking about radiology, calling us technicians and saying that the school's only 6 months and we help diagnose patients with the doctor. No, we don't. That's against our scope of practice. And there's so much stuff you guys I could share. You know that you could be a radiologic practitioner assistant. Actually, it's called an RRA now. What, the 7-on-7 offs aren't as popular? No, because the hospitals think that if you get one person on a 7-on-7 off that makes a mistake, x-rays the wrong person or what gives them contrast and they shouldn't have had contrast or whatever, they blame it on the 7-on-7 off because they want to get rid of because the hospital on the books, they're giving away 10 hours. They're paying for 10 hours of non-production. So any CFO or administrator outside of radiology is going to go, what do you mean you give your employees a free 10 hours of pay? We need to stop that. And it's like, okay, stop it and see if you have any techs left that are going to work that shift for you. So that's why they're disappearing, because administrators hate that, hate to hear the free 10-hour thing. But don't get me started on what nurses get. I mean, good Lord, the nurses are treated like fairy tale princesses. But that's another topic. I was telling you about radiologic assistants, RAs or RRAs, registered radiologic assistants. Again, you go to the blog, type in RRA or radiology assistant. I've got articles on it. These guys are the PAs of the radiology world. These are like physician assistants. The only difference is PA can write a prescription, RAs can't. But RAs can do all kinds of stuff PAs can't. The only reason you'll ever see a PA in a radiology department is because they can write prescriptions and they can round on the radiologist's patients for them. Otherwise, you can get an RA to do all the fluoroscopy. An RA can do, bare minimums aren't as popular now. Yeah, thank God, right? They're still out there though. So are defecograms, pooping on camera. So are penile implants. There's a lot of stuff out there that you just would rather not do, especially the more out in the sticks you get. But back to the RAs. The RAs are cool because they're paid better than any tech, and they're basically a mini radiologist. And the problem in the beginning was the rads were scared. They're like, we don't want somebody taking our job from us. You can hire an RA for $100,000 a year, and then we're out of a job. Well, no, because they can't read. They can't interpret, and they have to work just like a PA. They have to work under the supervision of another doctor. So PAs. So this is where nurses outsmarted us. The nurses lobbyist group in Washington is so strong and powerful that they passed legislation saying a nurse can work all by herself, no doctor needed, if they're a nurse practitioner. That's what a nurse practitioner is. So if you're a nurse and you go to an extra 3 years of school and become a nurse practitioner, you can now open your own office and not even work for a doctor. You work for yourself, have your own employees. And they've created a doctorate program for practitioners, and they're called doctors of nurse practicing. And you have to call them doctor because they got a doctorate, and they're a nurse. But I digress. The RA is another cool job that a lot of people don't know about because it's not very popular everywhere. There was a big problem with it for a long time. You couldn't reimburse for it. So if an RA did something in IR, you couldn't bill for it because the radiologist didn't do it himself. Starting to change. There's legislation now that's allowing you to bill for RA. And so there's probably 20 programs out there in the country that have an RA program. So you want to see something cool, you got to be an ART licensed tech to get in. And I think you usually have to be in the field for 3 years or 5 years or something. But an RA, you just do fluoroscopy all day. Unfortunately, that's your BEs if you're still doing them. But you're doing the lumbar punctures, you're doing the upper GIs and small bowel follow-throughs, and anything pretty much that a rad will let you do on your own, except interpret. They'll never give that up. So there's the RA job. You could also, we talked about radiation therapy earlier in the cancer centers. There's, if you ever get sick of patients, you can go into the vendor side and be an application specialist. That's a tech. It doesn't even have to be a tech, really, but I trust techs or app specialists way more than somebody that's never been a tech. But an app specialist just travels around to the hospitals and says, hey, you bought a new ultrasound machine. I'll come out next Tuesday and spend 2 days there showing your techs how to use it. And those guys can make 6 figures. It's called an application specialist. There's an article about it on my blog. There's biomed, biomechanical engineering, facilities engineers, a bunch of different names for the guys that fix the equipment. You want to talk about big money? You want to talk about $400 an hour type money? Be one of the guys that works for Siemens or GE that comes out to fix your CT scanner or your MRI scanner on a Saturday because it went down Friday night. $400 an hour, $600 an hour, stupid amounts of money to be the repairman for, they call it big iron. Any of the big expensive equipment, they call it the big iron. MRI, CT, some of the nuke med cameras. But there's just so many job opportunities in this field. There's always sales. You can always become a sales agent and travel around and sell MRIs. The 6-figure job, guaranteed. Your MRIs are $2 million. You sell 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 of those a year. Well, you're going to make some big bucks. You get to travel. All your travel's paid for. I almost did it. There's a company car. All the travel's included. All the hotels. There was a way to use your own card and then get reimbursed. So you rack up all the miles. You take your family on trips for free. You can work for the machine makers like GE, Siemens, Carestream, all those guys, or you can work for the other vendors who do contrast, Bayer, Bracco. You can work for the software people like Epic. You want to make big money? There's another X-ray job that you don't hear about. Epic pays people $170 an hour to go to your hospital and turn on Epic for you. Like we rolled out, I was at the hospital. We rolled out Epic a couple of years ago. I mean, it's a big deal to change your medical record software. It takes like 2 years. And they send out a guy that's an Epic software engineer who just helps you program, the whole thing. Okay, a patient comes in the front and they need an X-ray. That's going to trigger an order to print out an X-ray, and it's going to, trigger the light to come on in the secretary's office. That means there's somebody out front. Go get them. And then when the X-ray tech completes the exam, that triggers for a CPT code to drop and sends it over to billing. So all that kind of stuff. These Epic guys are making stupid bank, literally 170 an hour or more. Look it up. If you're lucky, you can call an Epic person and talk to them. But Epic is, I don't know, what are they, 70% of the market now? They're taking over. It's a beautiful piece of software. It gives you any data you could possibly dream of. And that's another job that you don't have to be a tech to do it, but if you're a tech, you understand it a lot better. I guarantee Epic would hire a licensed tech over a computer software engineer. It would help to know both, but that's another great job. A lot of travel. You have to be ready to travel. Then there's traveling, right? Traveling techs. You can be a travel X-ray tech, travel CT, travel anything. There was somebody that just posted on my Facebook group. I guess there's a strike in Chicago, which I'm going to have to follow up on because X-ray doesn't usually go on strike. That would be very interesting because we get pushed around so much and taken for granted. Nurses strike all the time, right? Look out in California. There's always a nurses group on strike in California. But I think I heard X-ray techs are going on strike. So there was a company that was posting on my Facebook group saying $5,000 a week will pay you if you can get to Chicago by Saturday night. And that was last Saturday night. So it was a 2-week guaranteed contract, $5,000 a week, potential for a third week because they weren't sure. The hospital wasn't sure if they were going to have everything figured out for the strike. So you could fly, you'd fly out there, put the hotel and flight on your credit card. They reimburse you. Then they pay all your living expenses out of that $5,000. So you're pocketing probably $4,000 a week or whatever. Just go shoot X-rays. And what do you really have to worry about? You really have to worry about messing things up because you're not going to be there in 2 weeks. And I'm not saying that, we do the best we can. We care about diagnostic quality. I'm just saying the stress of a regular job where you don't want to screw up because you'll get written up versus something you're going to go do for 2 weeks. Might not be too worried about that, but $5,000 a week. So there's traveling is my point. You can be a travel tech. You can do 3-month contract, 6-month contract. Sometimes there's a year. We kind of know that travelers aren't going to know everything. They may not know our particular brand, so you got to give them time to get used to the brand. But for the most part, they don't let you travel unless you've been in the business for a while. Because being in the business means you've probably worked on a couple different pieces of equipment. And so you should be able to walk in, like for ultrasound, I should be able to walk in and use any machine. Some just take me longer to figure out than others. And usually they know, if they've used travelers before, they leave little notes to send the image to the radiologist. You got to click this and this and this and then this, and they leave you a little cheat sheet. But you can always call up the vendor and say, hey, I'm a traveler out here. I got to push an image. What do I do? Traveling makes more money than working in the hospital because it's like a PRN. You're not getting any benefits. So if you ever want to take time off or whatever, and you want to just travel the country, right now, there's literally travel gigs everywhere. Dale Hannigan owns his own travel agency. He's on my group, the Radiology Technologists group on Facebook. He just posted some stuff in New Mexico, Texas, I believe. He gets stuff all over the country. And there's lots of that kind of stuff for every modality out there. So there's travel. I mean, there's so much stuff you can do. So it looks like I'm not seeing any more questions. We're a little over 2 hours. I'm okay leaving it on while I get some more work done. It's not hurting me to leave it on. So does anybody else have any questions? Barium enemas aren't fun, but I'll take a barium enema over a rectal abscess ultrasound any day. Don't even ask. Blah. They don't tell you about that stuff, when you're looking into the school or even in school. They don't tell you about some of the stuff you're going to see. Like, I don't even think they told us we were going to be doing phlebotomy or learning how to start IVs in x-ray school. We just all of a sudden one day found out we were going to have to start sticking each other and get proficient at sticking each other. I'm like, really? All right. So I'm going to mute my mic and do some computer work. And I've got 2 screens, so I'll do my work over here and I'll watch this one. If anybody pops up with a question, any question at all, you want to know rates of pay for a particular modality or where to go to school or whatever, post it on there and I'll see what I can do. All right. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Sarah says, this gave me so much information. This week is final, so this gave me a jump start on my application. So, Sarah, you're in your finals for your prereqs to apply to the X-ray program. Is that right? You should scroll up. No, you should hop on our Facebook group because somebody was interviewing today, and you may have already heard me say this. But somebody's interviewing today at Pima Medical Institute for X-ray, and they said, what questions can I ask? And I posted like 8 of them on that Facebook group because it always looks good if you have, they'll interview you and ask you all their questions, and they'll say, do you have any questions for us? And sometimes you're like, did I get the job? That's my main question. But they like to see that you want to check out. You want to say, well, I'm applying here because I researched your school and I see you're in 4 states and you're really invested in the profession, and I have some questions here. Show them that you checked out the company. You definitely want to show them that you researched the profession. Stuff on my chocolate. You want to show them that you researched the profession. There's nothing that I hate worse than somebody is applying for X-ray school and they don't know the first thing about X-ray. They want to know that you know somebody that does it, or you shadowed somebody, or you volunteered in a hospital generally, just volunteered in the hospital. And that's how you got to see what X-ray does and whatever it does. Get to know what's going on, and don't just walk in there thinking you can answer their questions and be golden. It's competitive. You'll see. It's competitive. Fabiana says, I'm very new to rad tech, and I'm wondering how stressful it is to work in MRI versus ultrasound or CT. I'm still very new, so I'm not sure about how this works. Yeah, see, they don't tell you that stuff. And in a big hospital, you don't even see the other techs, right? They're in a whole other, I mean, they're across the hall, but you don't even see them. You don't talk to them. Where in a small hospital, 10, 20 bed hospital, you're all in the same area, and you're all helping each other. So let me go to Fabiana and then back to Sarah. How stressful? It's all stressful. It's all stressful because you got sick people who are miserable, but you learn how to adapt to that. And I'm gonna say you're probably meaning level 1 trauma stressful. This is all opinion, right? This is my opinion. 20 years in the field, quad modality. So somebody else might tell you something different, but MRI is not stressful in terms of trauma patients. Yes, you can get a trauma patient in there, but it's not your go-to for trauma. So when you've got a trauma that could die and you need to scan them, say they're in a car wreck and you would just do a head-to-toe scan, are you going to stick them in the CT scanner and get a 5-minute scan over the whole body, or are you going to stick them in the MRI scanner that'll take an hour and a half? You're going to stick them in the CT scanner. CT is the workhorse of the department. CT makes more money than any other department in radiology because you can do a CT scan in 5 to 10 minutes and go on to the next patient. And you can bill $1,500 and up for a CT scan. MRI, I think you bill $2,550. So you make more per MRI, but they take so stinking long, and 20% of your patients either don't show because they're rude or can't stand laying in that little tiny tube for that long. They freak out and say, get me out of here. And if you don't finish the MRI, you can't turn it in. There's no partial MRI study. I mean, you can try, I guess. I mean, a sequence is 10 minutes in MRI. So if they freak out at 5 minutes, there's nothing to turn in. I mean, if they order a head on you and you freak out right here and didn't get this, you can't do anything about it. You can't turn. A radiologist can say, don't even bring that to me, because if they had something up here that I didn't see and I didn't call because all I got was this part down here, I'll get sued. So when you're doing a head, let's say there's 5 different sequences of ways they do that. You may get 2 complete sequences before they freak out. You can try to give that to a radiologist and say, wait, look at it. It's up to them, right? You acquire, they interpret. If they'll take it, what do we as techs do? We write down everything on the study, right? Patient moved. Patient was drunk. Patient was yelling at me. Patient was hostile. Patient was morbidly obese. Whatever, to explain to them why this may not be the perfect exam. You don't want to do a crappy exam and send it to them, because then they'll just think you suck. You write down everything. Patient moved. Patient drunk. Patient, whatever. Repeated twice, whatever. But when it comes to stress, your stress in MRI is different. Your stress in MRI is about, would you please just hold still? Would you please just do what I ask? Would you please, because the tech is sitting there going, you're in a 10-minute sequence and you're at 9 minutes, 30 seconds, and the patient coughs. Okay, I'm going to have to start that all over again here. And you got to, so the stress in MRI is about, they ask you this big long sheet of paper. Have you ever had surgery? Do you have any implants? Is there anything that's going to make you have a hard time in there? So I know now before I put you in there. And you stress because sometimes they don't give you the right answer. Sometimes they don't know any better. They'll show up with some kind of an implant in their knee, and they're supposed to be given a device card that says exactly what is in their knee. And sometimes they don't have it. They're like, yeah, I got a knee replacement. I don't know what it is. Well, I can't put you in my scanner then, dude, because if it's the wrong kind of metal, you can't do it. So the stress in MRI is more about keeping your patients safe, because they may not even know any better. We were talking earlier about the black light tattoos. People are getting these UV light tattoos that can only be seen under black light, and they think, well, I don't need to tell the technologist that I got a tattoo of mom right here because they can't even see it. You can only see it if you put a black light on it. Well, what they don't know is ink used in black light tattoos has metallic fragments in it. So when they get in that MRI and they're in there getting scanned and that big magnet's on, it starts burning their skin. Oh, what's the matter? I'm burning. What, do you have a tattoo there? Well, yeah. Well, I asked you if you had any tattoos. So the stress with MRI is about keeping your patient safe and workflow. Because as soon as that first patient screws up your schedule, everybody else is late for the whole rest of the day and they're all mad at you. So the stress in MRI, I'd say that's most of it. There's also, if you have radiologists to get mad because it wasn't perfect and they're mad at you, that's stressful too. Why did you send me this? Why didn't you give me this other sequence? I like the other sequence better. Well, sorry, doc, there's 10 of you on, and I wasn't sure which one of you was reading. So if you would all do the same protocol, we wouldn't have any problems. But radiologists like to have different protocols. So what do you want me to do? So that's the kind of stress you get in MRI. CT is completely different. CT is you get a phone call. Yeah, it's the ER. We got a trauma. It's a 7-year-old. She's not breathing. We got to bring her over, scan her lungs to see if there's a puncture wound. That sucks. So you got to get the room ready, hold it. You got an outpatient scheduled to be in there, but you got to tell the outpatient, sorry, we got a kid that might die. And they're understanding. They'll go, oh, okay, you go ahead. But then now you're getting backed up with your patients, because that's kind of a thing every tech has to worry about is your patients getting backed up. But then you've got this trauma, and it's all on you. When you're in CT, you're sitting at your thing like this with your screens in front of you and the scanners out there, and you've got doctor, nurse, respiratory, aid, transport, and they're all like, oh, I swear to God, they're on. You can hear them breathing right here. Like, what do you see? What do you see? Is there a problem doing it? Are you done? Can I take them back yet? And you're like, dude, and you'll train them over time to get off. And I'm not telling you what I see. I mean, if you get comfortable, fine, tell them if you've got that relationship. But the radiologist should be telling them what's wrong. But that's the stress you get from CT is you got to hurry up, go. I got patients outpatients, but I got ER backing up and I got outpatients backing up, and I got 2 scanners and I'm running them both. And sometimes you got 3 techs. You got 1 at each table running each scanner and a third person bouncing back and forth trying to help keep up with the paperwork and running to get the patients. And so that speed is completely different than the speed in MRI. And so CT is more about, I got to get it done. I got to do it right the first time because that person is in trouble. And if you have to repeat it, maybe it's only another 10 minutes, but you don't want to have to repeat a trauma. You want to get it right the first time. And sometimes in CT, you're injecting contrast, and you have to take the images right when the contrast hits a certain spot of a certain organ. So if you're doing a CT chest for a pulmonary embolism, you want to see it in a certain area. And if you wait too long, everything's filled up. Then you messed up. And then you can't just do it again real quick because now you got contrast everywhere. You can't just like put them through dialysis and flush it all out. You messed up. So you've got to know what you're doing, and you got to be able to keep your head, because if you're in a trauma and you got respiratory could be in there with lead shields on, bagging your patient while you're scanning that patient's chest. I mean, you got to be able to keep it cool, do your job, do it right, and get it done so that when you're done, you can say, I'm all done. They all start taking them off the table and taking them back to the ED, but then you got to finish it all, because CT doesn't just do an exam. They do one type of exam where you accumulate axial images, which is, the round images you see where you can, it's like if I cut myself in half and I look straight down. That's cross-sectional, right? CT techs have to take that cross-sectional data and reformat it into coronal and sagittal reformats, which means you've seen them. The CT scans where it starts on this side of the body and it goes through and slices to this side. That's a sagittal reformat. And then from front to back is a coronal, because you're cutting on the coronal plane. That's why they teach you that term in medical terminology, the coronal plane and sagittal plane and mid-sagittal and transverse and all that stuff. So CT, and that's the thing is the ED doc's going, well, what's the result? Well, I just scanned the patient, doc. I've got to do my recons, reformats, and then send it over to the radiologist. And then when he's done reading the other trauma, then he'll read your trauma, and then he'll call you and tell you what he sees. So CT is kind of if you want to talk about stress, a CT is probably the most stressful. Once you're in there for a couple of years and you got it down, it's non-issue. I mean, you're still going to be, and that's where you find your rock star drinkers, right? Your monster drinkers, because they're used to it now. They got to have it all the time. Even if they're not scanning a patient, they're down in those damn monsters and Red Bulls, because this reminds me of the old Beavis and Butthead. That's your CT guys, especially your night CT guys. You'll see a trash can with like 6 Red Bulls in it. So The other one you asked about was what, ultrasound? Ultrasound's pretty laid back. You're not really doing traumas. You could get called to the ER, I guess. If you're doing echo, if you're doing heart ultrasounds, you could get called in, I guess, to the ED for pericardial infusion or something. But for general ultrasound, you're pretty much an 8 to 5 person. Somebody gets stuck with a 2 to 10, and if the ED complains enough, somebody gets stuck overnight working a night shift. But that night shift guy is doing a couple of gallbladders because somebody ate something at 2 a.m. and set off their gallstone, or somebody who's pregnant wants to know what the gender of their baby is, because they don't want to wait 2 weeks to get in. Then they don't know how it all works. They don't know. Gender doesn't show up until about the 16th week. So somebody who's 12 weeks, 14 weeks, they're like, I'm going to go to the ER and tell them I'm bleeding a little bit, and that'll get me an ultrasound, and I'll ask them what kind of baby I'm having. No, it doesn't work that way. First of all, you got to wait. If you're lucky, you get it 16 weeks. They usually schedule the gender part around 21, 22 weeks. And then most of us that if we get called in at 3 o'clock in the morning and you're pulling our leg like that for a gender reveal, we're not even going to tell you. Happens all the time. I can't tell you how many times I got called in the middle of the night for spotting, and there was nothing wrong. That it takes them all of 2 minutes into the scan, and the patient goes, so can you tell me what the sex of the baby is? I'm like, no, I'm not trained to do it. No, I didn't say that, but I say, no, this is a emergency room, and we're here to do emergency exams, and that's not part of our emergency protocol. That's something that they do at your 22-week checkup. So I'm just going to make sure the baby's doing okay and get you on your way. Okay. So ultrasound is about just getting patients through, just doing the scan the best you can. You got to take your time to get it right, but you got to go fast enough to keep them going. And not really traumas. There's intimacy. Let's go there. There's intimacy. Are you even still on, or you may not even be on anymore? Was that Sarah or Fabiana? Who was asking that? Fabiana. You're going to get intimate in ultrasound, more intimate than any other modality. Now, X-ray about as intimate as you get that you can get is that BE, but even the doctor does the tipping usually. Ultrasound, you're doing it. Male sonographers, we're doing transvaginal exams, we're doing breast exams. The only thing, oddly enough, and here's one of the things they don't tell you, we're not allowed to do HSGs, hysterosalpingiograms, which is a fancy word for put a speculum in, open it up, and shoot dye, contrast dye, into the fallopian tubes. You know what they look like, right? You shoot dye. So these are people with infertility problems, can't get pregnant. Usually, sometimes it's because there's a blockage in those fallopian tubes. So there's a radiology procedure where you shoot dye into, actually, you know what? That's an X-ray. I take that back. That's not ultrasound, that's X-ray. But male X-ray techs are not allowed to do HSGs. Not allowed to even watch. I mean, even outside the room, through the window. But ultrasound, we're expected to do transvaginals and breast exams. It's just like it's this weird double standard. So anyway, just to finish the HSGs, you squirt dye in and light up those the arms of the fallopian tubes. And if your contrast goes up through the curly and out on this one and it comes halfway and stops, you've got a blockage. So they can go in there with a catheter and clean that out and probably get pregnant. And sometimes even the contrast, a lot of times the contrast cleans those out and people get pregnant. So I actually recommend that to people who are having difficulty getting pregnant. I'll say, have you ever tried an HSG? And I'll kind of explain it to them, and they'll go, oh, and they'll look into that. Not many people know that, but ultrasound gets a lot more intimate with the patient because you're going inside the body, which you don't do that with CT and MRI and X-ray, really. And males do everything females do in ultrasound. So, but we always have chaperones. So if I'm doing a transvaginal procedure, I always have another female in the room. I never insert the tip. They don't really tell you that in school. But someone shared with me that you can ask the patient to do the insertion, and that's just always been my practice. I'll raise their sheet up; they're fully covered, so total privacy. I'll have the wand, big long stick. Your transvaginal probe is a big long stick, and I'll put it under the sheet, and I'll say, "Look, I'm going to hand this to you, and I want you to grab it at the close end and put it in just as far as you can without being uncomfortable, too uncomfortable, Let me know when you're done, and I'm going to hold on to the other end. And that's how you do those procedures a little bit, but you're pretty much just checking out the adenine, and you scan through the ovaries, through the uterus, and if your probe is kind of this way, then you turn your probe this way. So you would go like that and do the same kinds of things, and you're looking at it in a different plane. So male sonographers are doing transvaginals, we're doing breast ultrasounds. So when you ask about the stress of ultrasound, really the only stress is if you get behind and people start getting anxious, or you're doing an OB exam and there's a fetal demise, or there's something wrong, a cleft palate, you find something, because it's hard for when you're looking at it and your face instantly goes, oh, and the patient's watching you the whole time, so you got to like not be like, no. In some cases, you have to call the doc and be like, get the radiology. You got to come in here and look at this. And then they're like, well, why are you calling the doctor? And he owes me a coffee. You just got to kind of roll with it, because you can never, ever, ever in any of these modalities tell a patient what you see, ever. It's out of your scope of practice, and you can get sued. You can lose your job. So in ultrasound, you're going to find fetal demises. You're going to have patients that come in that say, I haven't felt the baby's heartbeat in a while, or they don't even know that there's anything wrong. And you're scanning, and that heart's not beating. Or you can see other major issues. So you have to get the doc. The doc has to tell them. And it just sucks. That's one of the downsides of sonography. But wherever you end up, maybe you don't do a lot of OBs. Who knows? It depends on your modality. You could do ultrasound and do vascular only, and just do veins and arteries all day long. Yuck. But that's a job. Ultrasound can do general, which is everything, but not echo. General ultrasound techs do not do echo. Now that doesn't mean you can't learn it. But if you go to school for ultrasound, you're learning general sonography. That doesn't even include vascular. They may include vascular into the program to help you, but ultrasound school is general. That means thyroids, testicles, abdomens, and a few other things. Then there's vascular, which is all of your veins and arteries in your arms and legs, carotids, lots of hepatic veins, renal arteries. That's vascular. And you only learn that stuff if you take extra training. And that's an entire job all by itself in the vascular lab. They're separate outside of the department. Usually that's not even in radiology. That's under cardiology. So you can be a general ultrasound tech, you can be a vascular ultrasound tech, you learn the heart, which is echo sonography. You can subspecialize with echo and learn pediatric echo, which you're the king of kings when you get to that point. You're worth your weight in gold. So when it comes to stress, there's different kinds of stress. So that's a good question. I don't know that you're ever going to get away from it, no matter what modality you go in. But if you want to minimize your stress as much as possible, you probably should look at mammography or DEXA scanning. But mammography, we all know, is painful, right? There's no such thing as a comfortable mammogram. And so I think all the girls pretty much know that. But I would get complaints as a director. I would get a complaint turned in from a patient that she had a painful mammogram. What do you mean? What do you mean? Yes. So I just apologize and say, we'll try our best. Now they're actually letting patients hold the trigger so that they compress themselves. And studies actually show that they compress harder when they're in control of it. So it's a win-win. You can't blame me that I hurt you. You're the one pushing the button. But they actually compress it, because the more compressed, the more they spread out that tissue and you can see more of it. So I hope that answers your question about the stressful part. X-ray, general X-ray will never get the respect it deserves, because nobody knows what we do but us. And part of that, what I mean by that is we do so much in X-ray. You could be in an OR all day long running C-arms in the OR. You could be assigned to the emergency room all day long and do nasty traumas all day long. I'll never forget getting called in the ER, and it was two drowned little girls that drowned in a pool. And they were naked because they were stripped of all their clothes, and they were that ashen blue-gray, awful color. And I had to sit there and wait until the doctor was ready for a chest x-ray. And I don't even know why, because they were already deceased. And I think actually they ended up calling it off and said, never mind, don't need it. But you're going to see stuff that you wish you had never seen, and they don't tell you about that either. But it depends on where you're at. If you're not at a level 1 trauma, you're not going to see somebody's foot hanging off or sitting on the bed next to them. If you're in an outpatient clinic, you're not going to see that stuff. So I see people ask questions like, well, I faint at the sight of blood, but I really want to be an x-ray tech. Well, you're probably going to see a little bit of blood no matter where you go, but you can significantly reduce the amount of blood you see if you just go work in a doctor's office. Do the x-ray, go do x-rays for a chiropractor or for an ortho clinic or something like that. Stay out of the hospital, stay out of the quick care, the urgent care, whatever they call it in your region, because that's healthcare. You're going to see some blood. Well, how did I get off on, stress? I guess we were just talking about stress. And it's also going to depend, like, here's another type of stress. So we have an ortho clinic in town that has 2 x-ray techs, and they each 8 to 5, do 50 x-rays a piece a day. 100 exams a piece for 2 techs. That's every 3 minutes. That's an x-ray series, like a whole hand every 3 minutes. So the funny thing is, these techs just kick ass and they're like, yeah, so I did 50 exams. Yeah, I'm tired, but I got it done. Well, what's the problem? Then you walk over to the main department in the hospital, and 3 techs sitting there going, man, I did 12 exams today. Seriously? Go work the ortho clinic every 3 minutes. So the stress that those ortho techs, they're not called ortho techs, they're x-ray techs working in an ortho office, but the stress they have is hurry. And what I had to deal with at that ortho clinic was the staff was having to do all kinds of stupid stuff like, well, this patient needs their x-ray CD put in the computer so the images go onto our PAC system. And so they thought that had to be an x-ray job because it was dealing with x-rays. Sorry, any secretary can put a disc in a thing and stick it in and hit burn. I had to say, no, you are not stopping my techs to burn a disc. Because they had like 15 CDs or more a day, 5 minutes each or something there. I'm like, no, you train somebody in the office to do that. So those kind of techs they're stressed just because they gotta, and you always gotta get patients, I can't move my arm, and you gotta kind of baby them, but yet you gotta be kind of stern. Look, we've got to get this x-ray done to find out what's wrong so the doctor can help you. But that's the beauty of being an x-ray tech, is you don't just learn the technique of how to get a perfect image, you learn how to manipulate the machine. So the best way I could try to describe it is if you got to do somebody's arm and they won't bring it down from like this position, and you've got to do you always have to do at least 2 angles, because if you only do 1 angle of a bone, you may miss something. So you get creative and you learn how to take that patient, and maybe they don't want to move it, but you lean them forward and you make them bring it out just a little bit like this. And then you bring the camera right up next to it and you shoot that lateral in whatever way you can, or maybe you make them lean forward and you shoot that lateral. So you get creative with how you acquire the images. It's not just point, click, and shoot like you're taking a picture. You've got to figure out how to get a perfect lateral. A perfect lateral would be like this, and you have a plate right here and you shoot straight down, perfect lateral. But if a patient can't do that, or whatever they're doing, you've got to figure out how to get that perfect lateral from another perspective. So that's a different kind of stress working over in the ortho clinic. And then you've got doctor's offices that are super slow. We've got a small clinic outside of town. In fact, they said, we're not even going to be busy enough for a full-time x-ray tech. Same thing applies for our lab. We don't have enough business for a full-time phlebotomist to draw blood. Can you give us a hybrid who will do both phlebotomy and x-ray? And I said, well, we can work on something. What can we do? And they said, well, can we just teach the phlebotomist to do x-ray? I'm like, no. They go to school for 2 years. We're not button pushers. We go to school for 2 years to learn what we do. But we can teach the X-ray tech how to draw blood, because guess what? We're already trained on how to do IVs. It's not that much of a difference. So in this particular clinic, the X-ray tech plays phlebotomist. And in my opinion, and I would sell it like this: look, you want more skills to put on your resume? Do you want to make yourself more valuable? Learn some additional duties, because you'll get clinics like this they'll ask for an X-ray tech, but the X-ray tech's not very busy, so they start going, hey, can you help us with inventory? Can you go take a couple vital signs on the patient? And if you get a tech that says, no, that's not my job, I'm not paid to. I had one that almost got fired because she refused to shovel snow, which she was a pretty small, older gal. Maybe she could say, I have a physical condition, I can't shovel snow, but it's not that hard. So if they're asking you to help out with this other stuff, you can say no and stay on your high horse, but you're going to lose your job because somebody else will. Somebody else is hungry enough that they'll do that extra work. So I got an X-ray tech out there doing lab work, no problem. It's a win-win for everybody. The tech stays busy. They learn new skills. The office is appreciative that they got somebody to do both. Patients don't have to wait. Sometimes X-ray techs are doing back office. Sometimes they're helping out with billing. Sometimes they're whatever you have to do. If you're in a small enough place, it's kind of job security in a way. Nobody's going to want to pay you to sit there for 8 hours and do nothing. That's what the night shift's for. So where are we at? Okay, I think we've answered just about everything. I'm at 2:30. What time is it? It's almost 2. I think I'll go to 2 o'clock. We got about almost 12 more minutes because it's almost Santa Claus time. I'm one of the local Santa Clauses. It's something I do for fun. I don't charge. I let people donate to charity, but it gives me an excuse to grow out my beard every year. I don't think I have any pictures on the website because that's something completely different, but I grow it out every year. I triple bleach it. I have a couple of Santa suits. I got my little, not chrome, what do you call them? Brass round Santa glasses. It's a lot of fun. You go to the nursing homes and churches and schools and whatever. I've walked through Best Buy, local Italian restaurant. I just walk in and start ho-ho-hoing, and people get out their phones. We take pictures, and it's a great time. So today's the day that I triple bleach it. And I learned a few years ago to watch out for the bleaches that say something about brass enhancer, because that in man speak, that means just turning your beard purple. And I ended up having a purple beard. I had to try and re-bleach to get the purple out of it. So no brass in your bleach when you're bleaching out a beard. I'm learning, but I grow it out every year. Run around playing Santa. It's fun to do the improv stuff. People used to want to pay me to do it, and it's just anytime you're being paid to do what you like to do, for some reason it turns out to be not what you want to do anymore. So I'd rather not get paid, just run around and have some fun. I had a friend call me last year and said, my sister's kid is being such a jerk at school. Can you go by there as Santa and tell him he's going to be on the naughty list if he doesn't straighten up? So I was like, of course, that's perfect. So I went by and talked to the kid and said, my elves tell me that you've been having some problems at school, and milked it. And by the time as soon as I left, the kid sat down with his mom and wrote a letter to his teacher saying he was going to be better. And it was win-win. Had so much fun. I can't help it. So anyway, sorry I got sidetracked. One more question. You said there were programs for a bachelor's degree, but between the associates and bachelor's for rad tech, would the pay be affected? Nope. Hospitals don't care. Hospitals want to pay you as little as possible. That's why I wrote another article about how to negotiate your pay, because the hospitals are going to try to pay you the littlest amount possible, and it's really annoying. So I wrote an article about how to negotiate. Always negotiate. Never. If they're at the point where they're offering you pay, they're not saying we don't like you. They're saying we want you. So even if it's just an extra quarter an hour, always ask for more. And if you ask for a quarter and they come back and say, our budget just really can't handle it, fine, I'll take the job. I had to try, right? First rule of business, never accept your first offer. but usually they'll counter or they'll accept. So, but no, you get a bachelor's degree, they could care less, because a bachelor's degree is not required to do your job. That's usually what it's tied to. See, if you're an ultrasound tech and you're licensed in abdomen and OB, and you run out and get licensed in vascular, now you're more valuable because you have another license. But that bachelor's or that master's or even that doctorate, for that example, doesn't mean you're going to take x-rays any better or do CAT scans any better. It's not even built in to the incentive plan at all. There's licensure incentives. Nurses, oh, don't get me started. They have all kinds of stuff they get paid for. But for techs, you may get an extra pay if you take on students. If you become a clinical instructor or whatever your place calls it, if the students get assigned to you and you have to keep track of them and check off their films and whatever, you should get an extra something, whether it's a quarter or $1 or $2. You should get something extra per hour because you're an x-ray tech who's now acting as a teacher in your department, and you're responsible for those people too. So it's like you're a supervisor now. So you should, but they'll screw you, because the place I was at got wise to it, because we had 9 hospitals and a lot of CIs making $1 an hour or whatever. And they said, hey, we're going to be rewriting our job descriptions this year. So let's add into the job description. We had Tech 1, 2, and 3. And if you want to know the difference between those, check out my blog. I put it on there. In the Tech 3 position, let's write in an extra line that says, and will mentor students or something like that. And will supervise and could supervise students or whatever. So because they put it in your job description, now it's no longer an extra, and you no longer get that clinical instructor pay. So when you're interviewing for jobs, this is part of those tips and tricks, is when you're interviewing for a job, ask for a copy of the job description before your interview. Go through that job description and see what it says. Does it have that our favorite phrase at the bottom, and other duties as assigned? That means they can ask you to change a diaper. They can ask you to do anything they want, because they'll say, well, it says right there, as assigned, any duty as assigned. But that's pretty broad. Hopefully it doesn't say that. A lot of them do, but and that's how they get around telling you, no, you don't get any extra pay for that. But get that job description so you know exactly what's expected of you. Does it say you're required to take call? If your job description doesn't say you're required to take call, you can kind of push back. Don't push back till after you get the job. But then when you're on the job and all of a sudden they say, Bob, you got to start taking call because Susie quit. And you go, nuh-uh, it's not in my job description, pal. And you lean on HR to back you up for that. But no, you're causing trouble when you do that. Your administrator's not going to be happy with that. They want you to be a team player, and you want to be a team player as much as possible. But that's why it's important that you get your job description. And then as you get your annual evaluation, if your boss dings you for something that's not on your job description, well, apparently you're not doing inventory monthly like you're supposed. Hey, boss, that's not on my job description, unless it's at other duties as assigned. But I'm just saying, your job description is your Bible. It's what you know you have to do. And if you're not doing what it says, you're held accountable. But if you're being asked to do something outside of that, I would take it to HR and say, look, I'm being asked to be a clinical instructor, and they're not offering any extra money, and it doesn't say on here that I have to teach other people or teach students or whatever. And so that's another tip. But no, bachelor's does not help you at all, no matter what. I have supervisors I had a supervisor that got 2 bachelor's degrees, one in healthcare and one in business administration. He was a supervisor, so that's helpful. He knew how to read spreadsheets and he understood budgets. Didn't matter to the hospital because he's just an X-ray tech. So I personally, I've already said it, I'm going after my doctorate right now. It has nothing to do with my job. And people say that, well, you're not going to get paid anymore with your doctorate. I don't care. I'm not getting it because the hospital's telling me to. For one, I'm getting it because hospitals usually have a nice tuition reimbursement program. Some don't. Some have really nice ones. Some pay for the whole thing. But if your hospital pays $5,000 a year and your program kind of goes over 2.5 years, that means you can dip into that pot 3 times. That's $15,000 to throw at a degree. And then if you work some other angles and maybe sign a contract with them to work 2 years, if they'll give you $10,000, whatever, there's ways to get your degrees paid for. So I have done that all the way. I'm at the end now. I'm finally going to get my doctorate next summer. And the hospitals help pay for that stuff, but I didn't do it for the job. I did it for me. So you're not fishing. If that's what you're looking at, Fabiana, if you ever want to be a manager or a director or higher, you're going to have absolutely a bachelor's, probably a master's. There's a lot of my most recent 2 directors were master's levels. So that's a whole nother topic, getting into those master's programs. Any other questions? I think we're going to wrap it up. No problem, Fabiana. Thanks for stopping by. Everybody's texting me now. So remember, go to the blog. I call it blog, website, whatever you want to call it. It's the radiologictechnologist.com. I've been sharing my knowledge on there for 2 years. So I've answered hundreds of questions because some of those posts answer multiple questions. I think I'm at 70 videos or something by now. You're welcome, JB. Yeah, Sarah, I am considering doing this a little more frequently. I've been trying to figure out, because I got the Facebook group, and then you got the YouTube channel, and then you got the blog. And I wish there was a way to get everybody together. And Facebook, a lot of problems with Facebook lately. So I thought about starting my own forum where people could go post, but that's a whole other thing to keep up with. So I think what I may do is I'll keep doing the blog and the YouTube videos, because what I like to do is create a video to answer questions. So if somebody goes into the Facebook group and asks a question, I'll answer it there, but then I'll make a YouTube video about it because there's lots of the same questions being asked. And so that's where the YouTube videos come from. But I tried to do one of those Facebook live things to do this today, but that would have limited me to only the people in the Facebook group. This opened me up to all of YouTube. So I'll also encourage you guys to go check out some of the other channels here, like X-Ray Ray. I think is a great channel to watch. There's some other ones that aren't so great. But X-Ray Ray is in X-ray school right now, and he's sharing his experience. I think he's in his 2nd year. He shared his first year experience as he went along, and he's even showing how to do certain protocols. See, that's what's hard about our job is we're not supposed to take video or pictures in the hospital. That's a hospital policy because of HIPAA. No hospital is going to let you knowingly, they're not going to knowingly let you take video or photos in their hospital because you might capture something in there that you're not supposed to. And so as much as I'd love to sit there with an X-ray machine and go, here's an X-ray machine and here's how you do this, you're not allowed. You lose your job. In fact, I got written up during the stupid pandemic because I got completely gowned up to go do a chest X-ray in the ED. I jumped in. I was helping. I was the director. I got completely gowned up, hood and everything. So they're all laughing, taking pictures of me, and I'm posing. And I said, send me those pics. So I shared one on Facebook because it was my birthday. I was working on my birthday, gowned up, sweating my butt off to help the team out. And some jackwagon reported me for posting a picture that was done inside of the hospital. And I got called to HR, and they scribbled out the word write up and wrote verbal. And I had to take it down. And I'm like, all you could see was me. You couldn't even tell it was me because I was totally gowned up. But my point is those rules still exist. So these channels like X-Ray Ray have to be really careful because if their hospital finds out, because he does his videos from right there inside his department, if those hospitals find out, he could lose his job. And I'm not going to get on his channel and preach. I actually did that on another guy's channel. What I said was, I'm really glad to see you guys coming out and start making these videos because for so many years we weren't allowed to do these in the hospital because I thought maybe we'd moved past that by now. And he responded on a comment on YouTube, after you said that, I looked, and right next to me is a sign on the wall that says no photography or videos. But he left it up after commenting on it and still doing it. So I'm like, dude, you're risking your job, but I'm not going to nanny. And it's good for everybody else. Everybody should be able to see what it looks like in an MRI suite, in a CT suite. I should be able to go in there and go, and I did one the other day. I did a YouTube video on how a CT scanner works, but I did it with a picture. I shared my screen and I used my mouse and I said, this is the gantry and here's how you do this. And because that's the only way you can do it without losing your job. But eventually I will figure out a way to get into a hospital when nobody's there. Like, I'm going to go in on a weekend and sneak in and I'm going to do a full on, I'm going to get on the table and I'm going to show you how to do a CT. And the thing is, it's just super risky. And so go check out these channels while they're still out there, because they could get fired. They could be forced to pull their channels, because you are not supposed to record inside the hospital in any way. So X-Ray Ray is being super helpful. Some of it's at his house, at his pool and stuff. Some of it's inside of a scan room. So I hope he's being careful. But go check out X-Ray Ray. He's got great content. I'd like to collab with him. I've said it a couple times in some comments. I'm like, dude, let's split screen. I'll be the old man from admin. You can be the cool tech guy and we'll talk. And still haven't got an answer on that, but I encourage techs to share their information, because if we don't, people like you guys that are asking questions aren't going to get the straight answers, and you're not going to know about what's really going on until you're in the program. And what if that's too late? What if you decide you don't want to do the, if I had serious problems doing transvaginal exams, I just spent 2 years in ultrasound school for nothing. But I encourage you guys to check out the other channels. Be careful. There's some out there that you can tell they complain a lot about how they're so good, the rest of their department doesn't like them. And they've got other videos on how they're using illegal substances as athletic enhancers. And I can't believe that's even on the channel. But just be careful what you're watching. But if you find a good one, leave it in the comment section of this channel. Let us know who you're watching. There's a gal out there who's really fun too. She shares a lot of stuff on her channel, not just X-ray. But she shares her X-ray stuff, and she's real genuine. And if I can, I don't know, I am real careful about who I subscribe to and stuff like that on this channel, because I don't want to be misleading in any way. But I do want to find her for you. Maybe, is that her? Yeah, Julia Green. I'll just grab it for you. Check this out in the comment section. Go check out Julia and go check out X-Ray Ray. X-Ray Ray has, he puts a lot more time into his video production. He's got like an intro and music, and I'm like, are we live? Okay. Hi, let's talk. And Ray's like all this motion camera stuff. I'm like, good. I'll make it entertaining. And he's got 6,000 followers. I've got 1,000. And I think we've both been on about the same amount of time. So it just goes to show I'm just here to give information. I'm not here to, to be flashy, or not these being flashy, but I just don't intend to put a lot of time into production. I'm just here to answer questions. Ray is putting on this production that's wonderful, and it's getting everyone's attention. And I can go through his comment section, and people are asking him all the kind of questions like you guys are. And he answers as many as he can. So that's the main goal, right? Is people in the field answering the questions, so everybody knows what's really going on. So check those guys out. Tell them I sent you. Maybe I'll get Ray to do a Zoom with me at some point. Or Julia. I don't think I really commented much on hers, because she does a lot of girl stuff on the side. It's kind of like her personal channel, really. But I like to bring people on and go back and forth like my podcast. I like to share ideas and be organic with the discussion. It's kind of weird to sit here for 3 hours and I'm looking at the comment section, which is why I'm not looking at the camera. So probably it looks like I haven't been talking to you the whole time. But anyway, I'm glad we were able to get together and have some discussion. I'm pretty sure the way this works is it'll be stored now permanently. So if anybody's really bored, they could spend 3 hours watching this. Check my blog. I put stuff up there every week. The Facebook group, you never know when that's going to go away, because Facebook can decide they don't like you or censor you at a drop of a hat. And I'll warn you, there are probably like 25 different Facebook groups on Facebook for X-ray, and some of them just suck. Not that mine's awesome, but I care about mine, and I make sure everybody's questions get answered. If I see 50 people have already answered a question, I'll just say, did you get the answer you're looking for? I don't need to answer. I don't need to put my own 2 cents in there. But some of the other ones are just filled with spam. Tons of people posted crap about, palm readers, videos, and stupid crap because nobody's really moderating it. So you may be drawn to a Facebook group that has 50,000 members, but that's also not being monitored, and it's a mess, and people are cussing, and it's just not what I would want it to be. So go find some Facebook groups, join mine. Chris Cotting is another instructor who has RadTech Life. That's another good one. I'll even pop that in because I'm being so overly helpful today. Facebook. Ears are popping, probably from talking too much. Radiology Technologists Life. Let's give you that one. This is Chris's. He actually donates his time, goes to different hospitals and does x-rays and whatever. Go join up with Chris. He's got 8,500 members, super active group. I already gave you mine. There's one other one that I like more than the rest as well. I'll give you that one. It's called Radiology or Radiography Tips and Pathology. And really, those are the only ones. There used to be a couple others that I really liked, but they, if I posted a link to one of my articles to help somebody out, they called it spam and kept writing me about it. So I said, that's actually why I started my own. I'm like, if you guys aren't going to let me put what I know out there and censor me, I'll do my own. So if you see other groups, and I didn't just mention them, don't even bother. Just come to ours. We'll answer any question you have. We share stuff all the time. We share images as long as it's HIPAA compliant. And there we are, 2 hours, 56 minutes. Okay. Make sure there's no more. Babyana said, oh, wait, where are we at? So JB said, super helpful. Thank you. You're welcome. Sarah said, I don't use Facebook during school semesters, so this was wonderful. Oh, yeah, no, I totally get it. You don't have to go to Facebook. I totally mixed feelings about Facebook. Problem is, it's just, it's almost a given now. If you want to have a business, that you have to have a Facebook page, whatever. And Sarah said, it's such a lost educational opportunity with no videos. You must mean the Facebook groups. So, yeah, you can post videos there, but I've tried to post something 3 times now and it just doesn't go through. So I don't know if it has to be under 10 seconds or what the deal is, but yeah, that's why I like this medium. Just wish, and maybe ultimately what we do is we set up Zooms where we can all get on cameras and do whatever. But if you guys are okay, oh yeah, no videos in hospitals. Yeah, I mean, what would be the best way for you to learn? Like all these students that didn't get to go to their clinicals because of COVID, that were told to learn on your own. What would be the best way if I was a clinical instructor at the hospital and my students were at home? Best thing I could have done is walked into the x-ray room and put my coworker on the table and said, here's how you do a foot x-ray, and videotape it and send it to my students. But you're not allowed to do any of that kind of stuff. Yeah, I totally get it. But yeah, both. Okay. All right. So what do you think would be you think like Saturday morning should be good for this, or a couple evenings a week? I don't think mornings will work out for most people. And there's probably some mornings where I'll be like, I just got out of bed. But maybe a Saturday morning or a Sunday evening or something like that. Maybe that's what I'll try. Maybe I'll try a Saturday morning and a Sunday evening and just open it up like this. I see what happens. I think if people saw that I was doing it on a regular basis, they would put it in their calendar, maybe stop by. But either way, I still upload stuff to my YouTube channel pretty regularly, and I take care of that Facebook page until I can figure out how to get that forum off of Facebook. I built a forum on my website, but it doesn't allow images, and we're diagnostic imagers, so you got to be able to post an image. So I'm still looking for a forum that allows for image uploads. And I think if I can make it user friendly enough, I can just tell the whole group, we're moving over here to my blog now for the forum. That way we've got total privacy and Facebook can't censor us, and I can have better control over the vendors that are trying to get in there and that kind of stuff. So, all right. Thanks, guys. See you later. Have a great weekend and stay strong. Watch out for that COVID.